morning, everybody. As I've said to all of you, we've had numerous RSVPs. I'm hoping everybody gets out of bed and wants to come to the conference. So maybe they'll come in late. So I'm Donna Wick, and I'm Director of Marketing and Outreach for Team Abilities, Client Relations, and then a Certified Olympic Coach, which we're about to go to the Olympics in November. Woo-hoo! Interesting story about this building. So we were in the Pruitt building down the street for 10 years, and we loved that space. However, it was an office park, so a lot of our members could not actually get out and walk about the space. And of course, you know, anybody that's on the spectrum, they need to pace, they need to walk, they need outdoors. Just human beings, you know, specifically, we need fresh air, time outside. And so we had looked for a long time for a space. We actually looked at this space a year or so ago, and I think like 12 different owners own this space. And I tried to come in and negotiate. Everybody spoke Spanish, so I speak poquito. And so we just could not make it work for us to get this space. So I went over to Church Project, and I thought, hey, you guys are busy on the weekend. We're busy during the week. Why don't we utilize some of your space, okay, so you can monetize space that's not being used during the week, and, you know, we've got our space. And they said, okay, let us think about it. So then the pastor calls me, and he says, meet me at the church, 4 o'clock. So meet him at the church, pulls around, he says, follow me. And I said, okay, I get in my car, and I'm following him. And as soon as we turn the corner up here, I know exactly where he's going. And he comes in, he says, we are going to buy this space. He says, and we want to lease it out to you. And it was like, you have no idea how long we've been looking at this space. This is exactly what we want, with the, you know, yard outside, with the main room here, with rooms for changing room and our game room. Easy to get to, easy parking. You know, it was just an amazing thing. It was just a total God thing. So Team Abilities is faith-based. We, I guess it's a grateful heart based business. And we start off our mornings with prayer. And so, and divine things just happen at Team Abilities. It's just, it is just a God thing. So we're so happy to be in this space. Then Church Project came by and says, now we want to talk to you. While you're in the space on the weekend, on the week, we want it on the weekends. So they're going to bring their, what they call project abilities, over here on the weekends to utilize the space. So it kind of flip-flop, total God thing. We're so happy to be in this space. We do have all the land outside. We've got picnic tables, volleyball, just ordered soccer nets and tetherball, so our team members can be outside. They love being able to just, you know, walk out the door and enjoy some fresh air. So we're so lucky to be in this building, and we're so lucky to share it with Church Project.
Also, they host Night to Shine.
Oh, they do? Oh, wow. That's great, because we would have to go.
To their campus where
yeah,
you were.
yes.
So that's sort of their heart.
Yes.
Because all of their congregation pitch in like crazy.
That is great. That is great. We're also collaborating on another project called Project Clean. This is an outreach program. We have another nonprofit called Every Abilities. Every Abilities is a service-based nonprofit, and Project Clean is reaching out to the home insecure on FM 1960 at I-45. And it's about, really, you know, my point of view, it's, you know, washing the feet of Christ. It's taking the homeless and giving them showers and having toilet facilities available, having clothes for them, having medical care. Church Project actually has an urgent care now. It's Monday through Friday, I think from 9 to 1. They have an urgent care in case you guys need that also. We're collaborating on that. They actually have the trailer for showers and toilets. So we're trying to secure our space now, but we want to, feed and take care of our home and secure in that area, and also offer them phone access. We're feeling like if we can just spend a little time with them and give them access to, maybe they can call a friend or a family member, maybe they can get off the street. So that's our hope anyway. So that's December 7th. We'll be sending out information on that, but that's from Every Abilities. So thank you so much for being here today. It's Saturday. We've all worked very hard during the week, and as much as we love to learn, sometimes getting up on a Saturday morning to go to a conference is not our ideal situation for the weekend. So I do appreciate you being here. Really what we want to start is just a collaboration. So we've got some incredible speakers today that are going to bring their story, what they've learned, how they're doing things, where the gaps are, how do we connect, what other agencies are doing. I don't see Armando here yet, but he's coming in with Autism International. Kelly's here with Project Beacon. Connie's here with her story. And your name of your company again? Advocacy Aid, yes. And she's doing it from personal experience. Gail Fisher, who lectures throughout the county and beyond on neurodiversity, but it's her personal story also that makes her such a great speaker. She is probably one of the most active parents that I know in the IDD community. And that's just kind of what it takes. But it's really what I'm hoping this turns out to be, instead of just speaker, is that we all start talking like how we talk in our private conversations. Like, why do they do it this way? How come they don't connect these people? Or, why do we have to wait when the service that they need is really right here, So it's having those conversations so we can start making those connections, because no one agency can do it. No one person can cure cancer. No one person can serve the IDD community. It's all of us together, and we all have something to bring. So the value differential with T.E.A.M Abilities is that we do serve all levels of need, all levels of care. We will take someone that is total care, take those that may have behaviors, have idiosyncrasies, those are in wheelchairs, those that may not get picked up by other agencies. I think that our staff makes the difference in taking time and attention with our team members. For instance, in this corner over here, you'll see a chair facing the wall. Actually, there's a TV on that wall. So we had a young woman come in, and all she did was scream, and was food addicted. So she could not go past food without eating all of it. So if you had a 24 pack of cupcakes on the counter, they would be gone. And still just scream. Now, we know, because we're all familiar, but we know that scream is actually a sentence, okay? For those that are nonverbal, that scream is trying to tell us something. So instead of trying to redirect, which I understand the importance of redirection, but sometimes you just need to ask them, what are you trying to tell me? Show me what you're trying to tell me. Because we know she is trying to communicate something in the way that she can get our attention. It just came to pass that she loves watching TV, not watching TV, watching TV and taking her camera and taking pictures as she watches TV. The camera is non-functioning, okay? She just likes to have that mechanism. And so we called Dad. Okay, it looks like this is the thing she likes to do. It's taken us months and months and months for us to divine this out, but this is what she likes to do. Now, do you want us to do this like several times a day, the entire day? How do you want this? He said, if this is what makes her happy, this is what I want her to do. So some people may come in and say, wow, all she's doing is watching TV. You have no idea how comforting her life is right now. She no longer screams. She no longer screams at her home. She no longer overeats. She can pass by food. She's still drawn to it, but it's not as a severe compulsion as it was. But that's one person out of 60 that we care for in our community living and ISS setting. But it's just taking that time just to spend with her to find out what is it that she needs. Instead of us just saying, she's got to get with our program, get with the program. How many times have you heard people say, stop yelling, stop screaming? Okay, those are just wasted words. So it takes a lot of finessing, as you all know. If you've met one person on the autism spectrum, you've met one person on the autism spectrum, because even though they may have similar diagnosis, they are going to be completely different. I think that's one of the greatest lessons learned we can actually give to families, because their families come in wanting to know, is everybody like my kid? Is everybody, is my kid okay? My kid's on the spectrum, but are they like everybody else? And it's like, they're all different. They're all special and they're all wonderful. And we are going to find that wonderful quality. We're going to find that wonderful quality so that they can have an incredible life and an incredible day here at T.E.A.M. Every team member is busy here during the day. We do believe in structure, not quite as structure as some other agencies. We do have a social environment. That's our main focus, is a social environment. So we get a lot of families that bring their loved ones in just for our day program, just so they can go on field trips and have interaction, work on crafts, things like that. But they are kept busy. So if we're all in our craft, let's say we're all making trick-or-treat bags, and your loved one doesn't feel like participating in that, or can't participate in that, doesn't have the acuity to participate in that, they're not just left there sitting. We will then take them over and find something else for them to do. So everybody has attention, everybody is going to be involved in something so they can feel good about themselves and feel good about their day. Does anybody have any questions or experiences with Team Abilities that you'd like to ask or share?
I do.
Yes. Thank you, Erwin.
Our son, through our relationship with Donna, came to the program about 6 months ago.
Has it been that long? Wow. Okay.
And he talked about coming out of the depths of problems and issues. We were at that point extremely desperate. The son that we knew at that point was extremely agitated, was showing some sort of a violence that we were telling Dana and their team to expect the worst. So we moved him into their home, and thank God that he had one episode that showed what we were telling them. Other than that, knock on wood,
Yes.
the transformation was night and day. But to Dana's point is this: everybody's different. The way they accepted our son was remarkable, because he's so addicted to his iPad. His life was, for the past 4 years, he was a victim of COVID. He was in the T.E.A.M program. When COVID happened, he didn't go, and he didn't want to go back to the T.E.A.M program. So he was basically with us. I'm gonna tell you, Team Abilities told us, no, we're gonna keep his phone and iPad. We're not gonna take it away from him. That's why we were like, gosh, because they have a no phone and no thing here. Why would they do that? How would the other kids feel? But our point, that they're individual, right?
Right.
So from that to now, it's night and day. I mean, we still got a long ways to go, but our initial experience with T.E.A.M abilities is that they immediately picked up on the fact that why would we disrupt something that was what they were going to leverage on to get better, right? So again, that's our experience so far. It's really
No, thank you for sharing that, because so his son prefers to be called sir, okay? And I could just hear, other entities saying, we're actually not going to call him sir, okay? But we just said, okay, that's what he wants to be called, as sir. He also has an affinity toward the 80s, am I correct? And so he'll say something like, let's get back to normal, which means he needs a touchstone back to the 80s so he can feel his level of comfort. So it's little idiosyncrasies like that that creates him as an individual, but also gives our team a greater understanding on how to best serve him. So we can't just lump everybody in and say, we're all going to do this today. One thing I learned, so I come from a corporate background, I come from a public relations field, and actually T.E.A.M Abilities was my client. So I decided I wanted to do something with a little more purpose, and I joined T.E.A.M Abilities. But I had a thriving agency, but mine was all like this. I mean, we were fast paced, we had to, cross the T's and dot the I's. One thing I learned quickly here at T.E.A.M Abilities is that nothing is going to happen fast. Nothing is going to go the way it's planned, okay? And you just have to be fluid. And so talking about Sir coming in was, T.E.A.M does a lot of things right, but we're not perfect. We're going to have those hiccups. And I remember telling the family, oh yes, come on. I mean, his room has been cleaned. It's all perfect. It's all wonderful. Come on over. And we walk in and the room had not been touched. The room was not clean. The room was not perfect. And to their credit, they were very gracious with me. So it's a give and take. So we've got 20 group homes, not to use that as an excuse, but most likely something happened at another home that took that person's attention to go over there instead of doing this over here. And so it's a give and take. I always say, please be gentle with talking to our staff, because that's the person that's actually interacting with your child every day. So, it's the thing about vinegar and honey, be as sweet as you can. So today, like I said, it's going to be more interactive and sharing experiences, and also something that was shared also is about the phone. So we do have a policy. When you come in, you turn your phone in. At 2 o'clock, everybody gets their phone again. But again, that's just not everybody. Some of our team members have to have that phone or that iPad, that tablet, that something for them to cope, to get through the day. And so we make allowances for them, and then we explain to our other team members when they say, hey, they have their phone. It's like, but that's what they need. You have other things that you can do where they're not able to do that. So it's just creating an understanding. So again, it's just a God thing. It's just a divine thing. So to begin, I believe you're first, right? So I've known Gail for a number of years. She's very prominent in the community. She is involved in everything you can imagine. And first and foremost, she's the mother of a child with special needs. And I've never really heard her story. So I don't know if we really just wanted to have this conference so we could all talk, or if we're having this conference because I just wanted to hear Gail's story. But she's going to share her experience. A lot of parents, and that's why I wish we had, hopefully our RSVPs will come in. But a lot of parents don't know the questions to ask to get the information that they need. And that's the problem. So sometimes families will come in saying, hey, we'd like to talk to you about a group home. Okay, we have 20 community living homes. Okay, we could accommodate you. Are you on the HCS waiver? The what? Okay, to get that waiver, it's a 20-year waiting list. Out of our control. So it's like we almost have to go into the elementary schools to tell them, look, if you think your child has special needs, if you think that your child is going to have some different challenges in life, go ahead and sign up for the waiver. By the time they age out of high school, then you're going to have the resources that you need. If you don't need it, then you just say, hey, we're good, and they give the slot to somebody, the next person in line. But if you don't have that waiver, then it's going to be really hard for you to get involved. Rachel's credit, who's our founder and executive director and is sitting at the table there, Miss Rachel. She does not want to have anybody wait. Once they have that waiver, she doesn't want anybody to wait to get their home. So we have a 6-month waiting list. Since I've been here, those words are just not spoken. We may need 60, 90 days, maybe outside 120 days, because some of the houses Rachel owns, some of the houses we lease. So, it's a matter of just trying to be able to lease a home. Sometimes that's a little more difficult. But she's not going to have you wait very long if you need community living. If you need a group home, she's going to make that available. We just keep growing as the need progresses. Plus, there are agencies now that are just simply going out of business. They're going out of business because that house that you leased for $1,200 last year is now $2,500 this year. Okay, it's just not sustainable. So, like I said, we're a faith-based organization. I don't know, good Lord's smiling on us. So far we've just been able to provide services. So if somebody comes to us, we are going to make it work. We don't look and say, oh, this person, oh, they have behaviors, oh, they're like this. No, we just, Rachel's words, we'll work it out. We'll work it out. All right, so I'm going to give the floor to Miss Gail Fisher. And thank you for being here.
So today, given that my son is 18 and we've got 35, 40s, 20s, what I hope we do is maybe weave a little bit of John's story into what you all are needing as far as resources. Okay, so I went around and kind of got some information before we started about the ages that we seek. I brought information that you might want later. These are my cards. Certainly, we can talk about the whole ARD thing and the the parent presentations and all that. That may not be relevant. Here's a card that you can pass them around if you want. You don't have to take one. Part of what has worked for us over the years is that there's really no. The list of questions always morphs. There's always something else that you want to seek. Where are the resources? Who new person has a brilliant idea of things that might be useful to our kids? So here are some flyers from the Behavioral Health and Suicide Prevention Task Force. There's lots of teams. I'm on a number of them. One of which is the Neurodiversity Please Don't Kill Yourself team. So here's some flyers. They have QR codes also to Mosaics of Mercy. Here's some other versions of the same card. Free resources. So what we're trying to do, right, is make sure that the families have what they need and that they don't go broke. They're already going broke enough with interventions as they are. Some Mosaics of Mercy has their QR code on that. I have more of these flyers, so there's plenty more I brought. And then our neurodiversity team came up with this, and I just want to feature it here very quickly. So this is called the Guide to the First Listener. So as your loved one might have a lack of expressive language, and they might have frustrations, and we're trying to really help them with their intrinsic motivation, we're trying to help them with their executive functioning, we're trying to help them with how they advocate for themselves, how they express themselves. And certainly my kid was nonverbal in the early days. Now we've got expressive sentences, so sometimes you have to be careful what you pray for, be careful what you ask for. Because now, at night when he goes up and takes care of himself at nighttime, he's just like a magpie up there yakking away. It's like Mr. Bean on steroids, but you get him in front of people and he's going to clam up, right? Because we all know the reasons for that because stuff. So Kelly and I are on some of these teams here at Behavioral Health and Suicide Prevention together. This guide for the first listener, we have field tested it. I've got many more than just this copy for each of you. We give them to first responders. We try anything to reduce, anything that we can go toward fewer tasers, fewer handcuffs. So way back in the day, a lot of us parents were quite concerned about when we die, then who's going to take care of our kid? This is something that never really goes away. So to that worry, I started collecting emails of any first responder that I could find. And eventually we had face-to-face meetings where all the teams would come in, anything CIT, anything an ISDT, any badge, any crisis intervention out in the community, EMS, all these kind of situations where our loved ones could be in a place and they need to do some degree of self-advocacy or some degree of communication. So this has some verbal prompts and the backside has no verbal prompts. So depending on their comfort with expressive language or point and shoot or point and talk. So if you were coming into a situation where someone needed to express themselves, such as Donna was sharing over there, and you want to get, so you're the guide, so you're the first listener, and it might be a crisis situation or it might just be an educational or a residential situation. How can you start this engagement, right? So we made this tool, we got plenty more of them. We're trying to hand them out to all kinds of folks that would be help ours when they might be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So feel free to use this in your home. The idea was that they could read a picture, look at the picture, process the picture, auditory process you to even if just some version of maybe it's not expressive language, but some sharing of frustration, some way that they can tell you what's going on in their heart of hearts. So you can try one side with some verbals and the other side with no's. Then there's a lot of other teams of good people that are out there. We're just about ready to do John's ARD for his 18th year. I brought something that may not be relevant for everyone. I do want to show you just really quickly. So in this helping our young ones to speak their own words, their own language. All right, do you forgive my jump drive? Okay, so this is, and I'll trust you guys to pass this around if you want. So this is let's see. Let me go here. So I made a list of tough things that we might want to talk about. I'm usually used to having something up there, but we can just carry this around. So I got this list. This list doesn't matter if that's not the things you want to talk about. We're going to open this up in a minute for your questions. And I'm going to do my very, very best as an educator to generalize what I've been through to help you with maybe your questions. Maybe some examples of what might have happened in previous years. John's neural pathways are pretty plastic. So as an 18-year-old, and we've been doing a lot of interventions for a lot of years, basically as soon as someone said, the ear, nose, and throat doc said, that's an AFD when he was 2, and it was like, I probably spent that long in denial, and it was like, oh yeah, Tommy Hilfiger ads, what the hell? And then from then on, it's just like, you just gotta be a sponge to learn and ask and do everything you can from a teacher speak, a therapy speak, a doctor speak, just whoever it is that's talking or sharing, or I'm peppering with questions, you just gotta soak it up. And then there's a responsibility, I feel, that you gotta share it out in the village. So at my website, there's a lot of free modalities, multimodalities of learning tools. I share, there's podcasts, there's videos, there's ebooks. I'm working on the 4th ebook right now. It's going kind of slow. The Evolution of a Child. If you were trying to put in one place all the interventions that a young person might need in coming up and how you would help them, even from early childhood. Okay, so here's a list I made. It's just a quick, rough list of tough things that we've been through that I think we could generalize on. But here's 2 other places where everything is listed online. I don't have to tell you everything I know, because I can give you a couple links and you can go to them and everything is there. So it's really more important that we deal with the things that you guys are frustrated with. We got dropped from the Medicaid with COVID insurance, right? So we were among those 70% of the people that lost their Medicaid. John is a survivorship kiddo because his dad died before COVID. We were divorced. Then the dog dies. He's got a brother that's transgender, fully transitioned. We've had some mental health issues. Saxon's down at Rice University studying chemistry on a master's PhD wraparound, but still not without a lot of mental health heartache. And so we actually went through, as a 3-person family, me and my 2 kids this summer, not only the ideation of suicide, but the actual plan, the actual knowing of what the plan would be. And John heard this and he had to then say, well, Saxon, please don't die. At the same time, we're trying to help him through 18 years old, puberty, no dad, lots of oh mom, old lady and grandma, and I bet you really wish you miss your dad. And so we've got all of these mental health things that are happening just all the time at home. And I got to make sure that I don't personalize it. It's not about me. It's about trying to help this young person, right, of all different kinds of birthday candles. So when I say kid or person or someone, just please in your heart of heart realize that it's yours, all right? I'm just picking different words, right? I got to make sure I get my pronouns right at my house. I got to make sure I get my names right at my house. But it's generally, we're trying to share all kinds of ideas. Back to the LIDA. So we got dropped with COVID, Medicaid, no insurance. If he didn't have a COBRA conversion from his dad's policy long ago before he passed, and then some version of survivorship, then we would have had no insurance at all. So now we're in the process of, we also lost Texas Home Living, and I'd signed him up, a good little mom, right? I signed him up for all the interest lists back when he's age 2, but boom, he's off Texas Home Living. So I'm over at the LIDA, I'm not really happy, and you can't be too pretty about this, right? Because yeah, I'm trying to help them as a community person, but at the same time, this is my kid, and he's fallen through all these kinds of cracks that nobody anticipated, because who would have thought dad died? Who would have thought survivorship would come in? Who would have thought that the Social Security Agency is going to send us a bunch of letters and saying, no, we're dropping you guys. It's because we're paying you because we've got these rules. So I'm trying to relink Texas Home Living, relink the case manager, relink our relationship with the LIDA, and that's meetings still to come. We don't have that greased yet, but I got a pile of paper like this high, right, of stuff we got to go through. And at the same time, he's 18. So we all know what that means for the transition ages, right? So, Mom, that you came in, do you have kids, or the ones you're here for, or what ages are they? Oh, they're with the team, okay. All right, so if any of us remember when our young loved one was about 18, you guys might kind of remember. It's just like, oh dear, all the rules are gonna change, and we gotta make sure that we do all these things right, and oh dear God, we better not do these things wrong. So there's money stuff, there's legal stuff, there's social stuff, there's residential stuff, there's interactions, there's transportation. Right? And so to that list, we've tried to collect, as a part of the Behavioral Health and Suicide Prevention Task Force Neurodiversity team, we've tried to collect a place that has, it's a Google Slides right now, but Google is giving us trouble, so we're probably gonna put it on a website somewhere else, but all things transition. And you'd be surprised when you try to put together in one place, and you could click here, and Donna can have this, and you guys can have all these notes. One place where you could click and you can have most of the topics of transition. Because right now there's no such thing of that, right? When you're talking about from dating, because we've tried to work together on some Zoom datings. So when I've been teaching that up at Lone Star College, the pros and cons of online dating, it was always my intention that it wasn't for neurotypical people like myself, but for our young people. Helping them through, so they have the passion, they have the want, they have the desire, they have the urging, and they have the envy, but they also have the other burdens that they have to try to balance, and then we also, STDs are out there, right? So how do we handle all of that for them to earn a good adult life? So for my John, as he approaches now 18 and approaches 19, and now we're in the world of adult rules, but he's still at the LEA. And so in working with our local education authority, I just got an email from his case manager, who now is in charge of all the specialized instruction at the Woodlands High School. And she said something to the effect of, dare I say, the adventure, thank you for the adventure of being John's case manager, because for all the times I would push and gently push, but I never pushed harder than I was willing to work myself. So here's something to share. And this is what I would like to share with you. And I give this to any parent who wants it. And some of this has got to generalize to your lives. So I'll pass this around, but I just want to show you, every year there would be about 15, 20 pages in the front of this massive PowerPoint that is called the parent presentation, that legally your loved ones have a right to present to the LEA with the law. At the same time, there's the quandaries. And so as we're trying to navigate what can they do to help us, what can I do to help them? As an example, we just came through the Woodlands High School homecoming parade, and that's filled with all these neurotypical bubble parents of the Woodlands. Everything's rosy, they're all going to Harvard, you know. But at the same time, we had our little float. This is the third year in a row for Special Olympics, Conroe Stars, and then a wonderful neurotypical club meet in the middle. So they would have some wonderful, good-hearted peers that would come and help our kids with in the specialized instruction. And I'm not going to say life skills, because people anticipate life skills being a hallway out of which you never come. Where in the truth of it, as specialized instruction, is the type of instruction. So you meet them where they are. And no matter what their academic deficits, and I do hate the thing IDD, so intellectual and developmental disability, that sucks all the joy out of the room. And with this Behavioral Health and Suicide Prevention Task Force, I put on a little tiny bit of a purposeful hissy, because I said, listen, we're not going to keep calling this thing IDD, because that's an old word. So we got them all trained now. They all say neurodiversity, which is great. There's hope. If your child is neurodiverse, which means that the neural pathways are plastic, we still have time to do interventions. They have a chance to prune, to use their intrinsic motivation, their own version of self-desire. I tell my kid all the time, I ask him all the time, what are you willing to do to earn a good adult life? You have to earn it. I can't do it. I mean, when you were little, maybe I could kind of maybe force you to do some things, but not when you get bigger than I am. And I can still take him down if I have to, which I don't like those days. I don't like those days, but it's been a long time since we've had to. And even then, I know that I'm not supposed to generalize it, that he's truly mad just at me, Mom. It's just that impulsivity, that impulse control, that self-regulation, that spark of frustration. So how do we help all of our loved ones contain that, so that we give them a tool they can use for their whole life, right? And that's the magic of plasticity of neural pathways. Okay, so back to this parent presentation. While I'm standing here holding this dumb laptop, right? And so this is page 1, and I would give this to the LEA. They've already seen it, John's approved it, and then he attends the meetings. So part of this is that get your person to do whatever version of sharing. If it's pointing and talking about those pictures, or if it's drawing out, I talk to parents all the time, get your kid a journal, get them a brand new box of crayons, let them pick out a book that they really love, and even if it's just pictures, or they're making some imaginary movie. In her heart, she's probably making this movie. I mean, that's how Temple Grandin sees, right, is pictures. So for all we know, and maybe someday we'll find out, when we get to heaven, we'll find out, because our people, they'll tell us stuff. They're here for a different mission, and we're just kind of along for the ride. And I prayed to be relevant when I was pregnant, all right? And so I got these 2 kids that have made me look under every rock and every toadstool, and it's my job. So I'm not gonna be some little old lady sitting in my rocking chair filled with shoulda, coulda, woulda, you know? I'm gonna be able to sit there and say, okay, I looked under every rock I could find, and I tried to share that with and find all the modalities. All right, so anyway, page 1. Let me switch this here. So what are some of the achievement areas? And I'll pass this around, and then so page 2 is resume and all these kind of things. So I'm...
Gail, is this something that you can email me and I can see?
Yeah, right, okay. So we can do that. I do want to set this here just in case we got, let's see, parents, helpers, maybe let's start down here just for... In case you want to just scroll through the pictures. And so there's a lot of different examples. I also then have this list of hard things that we could talk about. So you can flick, it's a touch screen. I know I talk fast, and I'm not exactly sorry, but I've got my timer, so my timer's going to run out here faster than a speeding bullet. I know Kelly, we've never met before, but there's so much we can share. I've known Donna for a long time, Rachel even longer. So the reconnection with lost resources. Don't ever give up. You have to recognize, I have learned to recognize the quandaries and to work with them. Not that I'm saying it's a charm offensive, but if I've never worked less than the person that I've asked something from. I don't know if we say that the other way around, which means that there's no room for lazy. There's no room for lazy, okay? And there's no room for, oh, I give up. And there's no room for somebody else is going to fix it. They won't. But everything that I would say to you all and anybody in your village is that do all you can to help your loved one do their version of what they want to do for their life. We can so easily underestimate. I could so easily underestimate John. But now he's tall and skinny. If we had pictures, I mean, I'm going to move this down here in just a few minutes. You guys are skimming through. So he wanted to, when he finally reached a point where he had some expressive language, then I would have to listen, right? So when he told me he wanted to do coffee cart at the LEA at the school, they had some job training, and it's barista 101 stuff. But it just looked to me, Mom, like just such a lower level. But you see, that's my template, right? It's meeting them where they are is not a tragedy. It's what we got to do. So this is where I got to put my id in my pocket or flush it down the toilet or somewhere else. It's got to be what my son wants for his life. And sometimes that's a really hard lesson, to put that parental shame somewhere else. I remember at kindergarten coming to the school system, and it was all I could do. It was all I could do, Donna, to just show up and be with those parents of all these kids that are all going to Harvard. And now we're still friends, and we just keep showing up, right? So to the parents is to just, the kid has to do the work ever more. I have to fade my prompt ever more. I have to step back ever more. But in the early years, no, I was right there. But then the more they step forward, we have to step back. And if I don't step forward, he won't step into it. But he'll be frustrated because he will think that I don't trust him or I don't think he can do it. So whenever we go out and we move around figuratively, I try to always make sure that he's a half a step ahead of me. Oh, this thing's zooming in and zooming out. So just there's my social media. I post all the time and share content. So I never try to tell parents what to do, but I will show people all day long all of our warts and our issues of what we've been through, because maybe it gives them some ideas. This is going reverse, right? So you go back to page 330, he's back in kindergarten. And it's like, oh, section 7, code 44, I'm giving the LEA the right to throw him into his list of hard things. And then this is the first page, and now we scroll current day backward. I'm given in that document called the ARD, and we're about to hit his 18th. So 18th birthday ARD, which means 12th grade. And what is he willing to work for with the team there? Because he's got to show up. And I tell him, listen, if you're going to use that deficit language of all this disability this and disability that, he's out of the room. But they'll leapfrog that. And so now we're talking just about the things that, and we're using his vocabulary. So meeting them where they are. Sometimes it has to be that we have to use that language. I have to slow down, back up. This isn't about me. This is about him. And he has to, when we get out of the car, we go anywhere. It's like, okay, you be the leader. So that he doesn't get, we had one time it was an elopement when he was very young and he wandered off. When he got brought back to me, good neighbors. There's good neighbors on this side. No, these are the good neighbors, these are the terrible neighbors. The good neighbors found him in the neighborhood and brought him back. And so then we had to have this little lesson on lost. And we had to make it a really strong teachable moment about you don't ever want to be lost, because you got to be able to find your way back from lost. So we just then tried to always make these layered lessons of everything to do in life of he's a half a step ahead of me. And that's physically, maybe not always realistically, mentally, but I have to always let him feel like he has to take the lead. So this is something that I would say is hard to do sometimes, but it can't be on my time schedule. So this whole thing about letting it be his schedule, and I then look at my clock, and I'm trying to do it all based on intrinsic motivation. Who is he from the inside out? Not me bribing him or stressing him or threatening him, and that's maybe more early childhood than 30, 40 years old. But some of these things can still generalize. I'm trying to stick to the whole thing being intrinsic, that who he is, who he's building his character is when no one is looking. So he will need to have trust. He will have to stick to his list. We do a daily list, and my Facebook and the website and all these things are filled with all these modalities that I just give, and lessons and pictures, and I freely give away the intellectual property. That is just fine, because if it helps a parent with some ideas, it's always worth it. So we've been through a lot. Yeah, he has bitten me and hit me, but then we have to deal with why is that happening? So what is the need behind the behavior? So trust-based relational intervention, TBRI, says, what is that need behind the behavior? Why is that screaming over there? Why is that when he gets so mad and then I would know to say, you must really miss your dad. Slow down, fewer words. Maybe there's such a time as when it's frustrating and so I would just say, okay, can you tell me? So if I'm the first listener, really this came up because if someone was going to kill themselves, then neurodiversity jumps off a bridge or in front of a truck. They don't really know how to go out and buy drugs and overdose. So before you would jump off the bridge or in front of a truck, can you tell me why? So let's start the engagement. So that's the premise of that particular tool. Yes, I do a lot to work with first responders. There's a lot of good-hearted people. I do a workshop called the Emergency Game, where it struck me that, you know what, we always train our kids. And again, these examples of all these ideas that the John and Gail shit show has been through. Less so the Saxon and Gail and the Lauren and Gail show, but then I still advocate for my Saxon. But that he's an adult down at Rice with a different set of troubles, and so I don't really showcase that one. But John knows that he gets posted about. And there's TikToks, and I try to make it with the neural pathways of joy and the choices and the happiness, and if he decides he wants to go and dance with Dance Dynamics. So that's pictures of these things. So Dance Dynamics has some wonderful after older programs, right? So as the kids age out of the LEA. So whatever job training, volunteer. This last summer, instead of getting a part-time job through TWC, which we could have, we established a relationship with Texas Workforce Commission outside of the ARD and then through the ARD, through the school system, but then also outside of it. We show up at her, Jenna Chen's office, and so she's talking to John and I'm sitting way back in the boonies, and she turns to John and she says, so John, tell me do you know about the disabilities that you have? And I'm sitting there going, oh, for God's sake. No, I kept my mouth shut. Right? But afterwards, I emailed her and I said, we don't use deficit language. That's not what he hears. And you can have all this. I'm going to give you all of that stuff. It's a Dropbox link. The file is too big, but you can have it all. And she says, well, I'm sorry. Our rules say that we have to use all this language. It's like, okay, fine. God, that must be a terrible place to work, right? Because I don't use that with him, but the ARD needs to. And I guess TWC is going to rub their nose in the deficit language. But that's not what I like to focus on. Okay, but anyway, so our case manager said, get him to do volunteer work. So this last summer, guess what the John and Gail show did? We were at Food Bank, Montgomery County Food Bank, and there's 3 rooms. This is the room temperature room, and you're cutting up boxes. This is the one that you got to wear, you're sub-zero and you're in the meat locker. But we found the sweet spot, which was the one you better wear your winter coat, and this is where all the produce goes, and it's sloppy, moldy, gooey, but nobody else wants to go in here. So this is an easy fit, right? So I booked us a bunch of reservations, and we spent a lot of the summer either traveling, because traveling is a wonderful way, and he's a good traveler, but then we've been on it ever since he was 2, right? He was 18. Now that's an investment, but I don't know of any other better investment. So I'm never going to regret that. Never, never. Okay, so we travel, but I also make it places that I want to go. So my thing to the family is when you do family things, make sure that it's something that your list should be separate and detached from their list. So Gail's list of things that she wants to do with her life is separate from John's list of things he better do or needs to do for his life. But we did prepare that list every day. So it's kind of like this job list, but not exactly. It's got his stuff, and he gets to goof off when he gets his chores done. So his reading, he's got academics every day. And when he gets down to the bottom, then that's when he can stem with his addiction stuff, and he does whatever he's going to do with his devices. But we do stay busy, because you know what happens when he doesn't stay busy? He's like this, right? And people say, oh, well, Gail, you keep him busy. And I say, yeah, but and he loves Home Alone, and he has a lot of that. And he can pretty much be trusted to go take care of the list, get the laundry up the stairway, go put his stuff in, do this, do that. We're working on cooking. We're working on all of these fundamental skills that he's going to need for his life. But he still gets his goof off time. But too much goof off time, he just goes straight to this. So I'm still wondering about how much true self-discipline he's got, right? So I don't know. Well, time will tell. He's an 18-year-old boy. He's got his little girl he's sweet on. And Dad's been afraid. And I say, you're too young to date. So this whole dating or not dating thing, and he's, you know, we haven't really gotten too much into the birds and the bees. We got the bird, but we don't have anything about the bees yet. And I started to talk about the connection of the birds and the bees, and he was like, oh, it's fine, Mom, we don't need to talk about that right now. So I will meet him where he is. So it's like, first you name it. So this came from Donna Zelt. God loved Donna Zelt, one of his special ed teachers a million years ago. First you name it, so you have the vocabulary, because they're lagging in expressive language, so we need to build the vocabulary so we know what we're talking about, but then you place a limit on it. So the whole world of boundaries, strong-willed child, love and logic, two different ways of looking at it, but they're great old, kind of like general ed parenting books, right? So it's embedded in just what we've done and what I posted on the website and freely give away. First you name it, and then you put a boundary on it. So I would say, okay, you're too young, and just, you can either be patient or you can find somebody else, because Dad says no. So we have to work through when someone else says no, when we try to socially engage. We got our teeth handed back to us sometimes. We would take risks out in the community, extracurricular activities. We made it through band because there was supports from the seniors on his freshman year. Sophomore year started dwindling. We got our teeth handed to us soon thereafter from Mom, from pit crew, and John from the teachers. And it was heartbreaking, but how else do our kids be satisfied with their life? I just say, short of blood and broken bones, and we've had some blood, but he's been brave through the costs of it all. So this is something else I would say, is let your kids figure out some way that your loved ones can take risks. Now, you can't protect them from everything. Hence the emergency game workshop that I've come up with, and I teach it to young people. I've been teaching it to first responders. I'm teaching it to early childhood gen ed people at the early childhood conferences. The idea there in that curriculum, either 2 hours or as little as 30 minutes, but let's list all the emergency things, bad things that can happen that we usually protect our kids from. Oh no, you can't have danger in your life. But what if they get out into an unexpected, I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now all of a sudden you expect me with my limited cognitive ability to thought process good choices, and I've never had practice. So sometimes we got to practice the hard stuff. So these are some of the things that I get involved in, but I always show pictures. I don't tell parents what to do, but we've been through a lot. I share it freely. Do I wear scars? I do. Do I have a lot of shame? Yes. Am I trying to come through the shame? Yes. He's I think, going to be okay. I hope both of my kids are going to be okay. And if not, well, we'll just work through it day by day. There's a lot of community resources around, and you're going to hear more about them today when I stop talking. Let's stop Gail and let's see what questions you guys have. I may have the early version of what you're going through. Principles might be the same. I am sorry if I've overwhelmed you. It's hard to kind of do a lot of things in a short period of time. I got a timer over there that's going to zing whenever it zings. What can I do to help you with your troubles? Questions you have, worries you have. Don't be afraid.
So, I mean, we browsed through your presentation, and it was like, if I just replace your son's face with my son's face, I mean, it was like going back memory lane.
That's right.
Monroe stars, all of that.
Yes,
stuff
yes.
Like that. So, like what you said, you know, there's the time, it's almost half, right? Our son's 34 years old. We went through this, and I love his goals. I remember that was literally his goals, right? Like, so the only question I have for you is this, right? Like, we planned as much as we can. Our experience is that all good plans, suddenly a behavior didn't happen, and we were lost. We could not react. We could not find the resources. We were not able to anticipate some of the challenges post, high school, post the structure that we have. Mm-hmm. My question for you is, how do you, being exposed to a lot of this, of the experiences, right? Like, how do you foresee the upcoming structure for your son? I mean, because you know that there's a potential gap, or maybe there's none, but as you're planning through it, like any good project plan, how are you going to anticipate those dips, sudden change of behaviors, sudden medication things, then you're gonna be on the tailspin, and there's no playbook for it. Like when we started our journey, there's no playbook for it.
No, there's not.
When there's a left turn or a right turn, there we go. No playbook for it.
I know.
So that impulsivity, so depending on if it's from my perspective as a parent or my son's perspective, right, then
We know that the vagus nervous system, we all have one. It's one of the overlaying templates of the sensory systems that we have. And if that vagus nervous system is fluttering in the wind, then there will be no teachable moment. So sometimes slowing down, coming up with a family plan when everyone is able to kind of do some version of communication is so important. And it may not be on my schedule. This is when I was trying to share that extrinsic and intrinsic. I can look at my watch and all of a sudden, boom, I just lost from the inside out. I'm from the outside in now. Hurry up, we gotta go. So then I will try to go playful with that. So to really boil the answers down, what my experience tells me is that we need to make it a mutual plan when he's calm. When I say he, it's just because my kids I got two boys. Could be he, she. They, I'm doing the they thing too. I run through them all. So in a calm, teachable state, mutual, it's gotta be a win-win, and it won't be happening as fast as I wish, and it won't be as pretty as I wish. And so, for example, when we had the dropping of the Medicaid, there was a whole bunch of turbulence. We're still trying to come out of that tornado, personally. There will be another one now as we approach residential, or as we look at the legal piece. We're going to go with supported decision making. It's least restrictive until the time comes when I realize it's not enough. I don't know if you guys have guardianship or something less. We're going to try less. We're going to see how that goes, but we're kind of tippy-toeing into that, right? Then we have to feel out the financial piece, the ABLE account, the special needs trust. Consolidated Planning has an excellent YouTube channel, and we're using some of their services, but then I got to figure out mine. I got wrinkles, which means I got to figure out my retirement and Social Security. And so there's the John bucket, the Saxon bucket, the Gail bucket, the executor. I got stuck with being executor of my ex's trusts for all of his people. So we've had a lot of family schisms from that. So it's just like there's really no end of what next is going to happen. It's like there's no such thing as it's going to be smooth. So I've changed my expectations. I've flipped them such that I don't anticipate it being smooth. There's going to be something all the time, but you can't let it make you nuts, right? So it needs to be something that John is going to be able to do his version of working through, or my Saxton. Stay alive, right? Don't jump. John's going to figure out how he's going to live. So if it needs to be something that we work on together, like I know another homecoming float, well, they'll put trails on the homecoming float next year. I'm starting to kind of work ahead on that one a little bit. What about, will my house become a host home? But then all these stinking rules that you guys tolerate, like, oh my God, will he have roommates? He won't live well in a tiny house. Maybe he needs to be with people. But you ask him and he changes his answer all the time, right? You can ask this way and then you ask this way and then you get an answer like this and you go back. So I'm not sure. He's very malleable in that he's more the follower than the leader. So as long as he has friends, so we're working on the friends, but then he has to do the one that's choosing. So now he's trying to charm offensive a few of his buddies in the specialized instruction class, but we can't get the phone number swapped because for some reason, these two 18-year-old boys can't get each other's phone numbers. I don't know what. Maybe the dysgraphia and dyscalculia is so big that John keeps coming home with a number that doesn't work. So finally, I have to go through, it's not the directors, we can't get the information. So finally, I have to ping the teacher. So in the old days, we would get everybody's emails, but now they don't do it that way. You buy the directory and maybe you get somebody's phone number or not. How do you get them finally, how do you get parent to parent connected so you can help to support your kid toward a social engagement? All right, so we had to do old school. We got connected, but as soon as John made a play date happen with Hassan and with Daniel, he was joyous. So all I can say is, it's never going to be smooth sailing. Always do what you can to help your child. What's your child's name? Sir. Oh, yeah, sir. Sorry. Duh. There.
It's name, actually, it's name.
Okay. Sir. Okay. So, no, that's great. But you see, he's telling us something. He's telling us that his self-respect needs a little bit more, right? Okay, so that's great because everybody's a psychological critter, all right? We underestimate their psychology and we underestimate their personal needs at great risk. So whatever Sir is looking for, then he's going to build that. If he can communicate that, great. We know that back here, this producer, Coppola, Ford, or whoever it is back there, that she's building something in her head. They're doing their version of sharing. So I look for shiny eyes. When my kid has shiny eyes, and I can tell by his body posture, I can tell by all kinds of things, he's on his right track. So what do I need to do less of? This is hard to do less of. We're therapy parents, right? I mean, like we are in the fire, but no, back up, shut up, back up, zip it mom, zip it mom, zip it mom. And I don't rescue. So if he's got a problem, I need to answer his question with the question. Even if it's a body language thing, I go, oh yeah, how are you gonna do that? Hardest thing in the world, right? And then maybe I collaborate with, so the parents of olders, I love you guys, because we're trying to figure out, okay, when Special Olympics plays out, and we know it shall, when he hits transition age and he's 22, then okay, it's unified, right? Now he still can dance with Dance Dynamics until he says he doesn't want to. And eventually we got 1 or 2 modalities in his pocket that he wants to do, but he hasn't yet. If my timer's not going off, I set it, honest to God, I set it for 45 minutes. So if tell me to zip it, I don't even, maybe I help other parents or I look to the parents of olders to see what they're working on. So we got a lot of things that Project Beacon is doing. There's another team I'm on. So I'm on the board of NAMI Greater Houston. So yes, I'm engaged. I'm on the Behavioral Health and Suicide Prevention Task Force and a bunch of things. I help run my own 501(c) with several different pockets. I do education all the time. I'll submit proposals and most of the time they get accepted. It's like, okay, while I'm teaching the world about our kids, behaviors, childhood development, job transition, pros and cons of online dating for neurodiversity. That is a wild ride right there, right? Emergency game as they go toward job training. I got my version of this game show because I am mother of John. But I am not mother of Sir. I'm not father of Sir. I don't know that. But I will want to soak up everything I can from you because we're headed toward that direction. So you guys are pioneers to me. God love you. God love you for being the pioneers. There's tons I can learn from you. And I should, because we should never reinvent the wheel if we can find somebody else that's done a better job of it, right? But we want to use the right kind of language. We want to work on the funders. God help us if we get into politics, right? That's like, but it's necessary. So the NAMI board of Greater Houston, right? The Coffee Crafting and Community, I'm on that board, where we're trying to come together with a place that our loved ones can come in, socialize, make friends, but be responsible for their own decisions, job skills. Is it going to be food bank? I don't know. Is he going to have a full-time job? I don't know that yet. There's a lot of things I don't know. But he's going to have to be the leader. And that life has to be okay with me. It has to be okay. And it has to be okay with you guys. It's not the life you envisioned and you fantasized about, right? Welcome to Holland. You guys all know that one, right? Welcome to Holland. This is a great prayer or song or whatever it is. It's a speech or something. But it's got to be okay. Our kids, so I'm just as spiritual as John as we talked about. My little sermon now on spirituality is I believe all of our kids are here for reasons. We aren't going to know that probably in this life. And I don't know why my kids have, well, I know I pray to be relevant, so I'm not going to let them down. And you guys aren't going to let your kids down. Whatever it takes is what we're going to do. But we're not in it alone. We can learn from each other. We never give up, but we have to trust our kids more. When I say kids, we got all kinds of ages of birthday candles here. If their birthday candles don't match their behaviors or their redirects, humor is a great substitute. We do movie one-liners all the time. I'm trying to give him tools so that he can navigate with his peers or be funny or be silly. The pictures here are the people that have helped us in our village, and they generalize to your worlds because they really are good-hearted people. We are magnets to helpers. And that's part of their mission in life too, is that to help our kids toward where they need to be. So just never give up. Neural pathways are plastic. It ain't over until they're dead. All right. And we all want to die in peace. That's what we want to do. So our kids are here for a reason, and I embrace that. So both of my kids are here for a reason, and it puts me in a lot of different places. So just kind of watch what it is that angels are trying to tell you. Sometimes, yeah, Kelly?
Sorry, before your 4 minutes, so that you say something. Yes.
About what?
Yes. Caregiver, yes. Caregivers.
Well, go ahead.
I don't know where they're meeting. I know that I'll be the community, but Dawn has another
Yeah.
line.
So from the websites and the information that I've given you, there's all of these, there's so many teams. She's talking about one of our initiatives that is to give caregivers self-care, right? So lots of links. There's no way to cover everything, but feel free to reach out to Kelly. She can talk more about it. There's websites, there's links on the laptop that we're passing around. We'll get you the thing. It's like we're matrixing all the time on tools to help. And us youngers are trying to pull our weight too. Us parents of youngers, I swear to God, we are really trying to. And find joy in your day. Find joy in your list of finding out who you used to be. Don't lose that. And help your kid. If you love your life, then that's one of the biggest models that our kids have. They know that you trust them and you believe in them. So I don't really have anything wiser to say other than that everything I got a minute and a half, is documented. So I don't really need to do a whole Vulcan mind dump, but I do say humorous, give them one-liners, pictures worth 1,000 words, watch movies together, do joyful things. My kid's Mr. Bean. He channels Mr. Bean, all right? So for all the times that we've got our teeth kicked in, he still got his things of joy, and I'll stack his joy up against other kids' joy too. It's a tough world out there. I got my other brilliant kid that wanted to just end it all and jump off a roof. So, we just keep meeting them where they are. Keep your joy. Your joy is very powerful for your kids and your employees' joy and the ones that you're trying to help. Humor, smiles, biggest way to redirect. Silly. You don't have to always be so serious, right?
Actually, we've got a couple of speakers in that live situations and kind of don't be here. So after lunch and after Kelly speaks, we can actually have a good panel discussion. We can all just sit round robin and we can share a lot more. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so Gail was saying to remember, find your joy, remember your joy. At Team Abilities, we talk about remember our why. And I had an experience yesterday. I probably text Rachel 400 times a day with just little things like, oh my gosh, this happened. No, it's so sweet. No. So I actually had meant to send this to her yesterday. So we have a team member here that is nonverbal. He is relatively new with us. He's kind of off to himself, very, very isolated. And so he's been in our day program and in our community living home for, I want to say, a couple of months now. And yesterday I saw him walk across the room, and he had a half-eaten, half-open bag of chips, and he had his fingers closing it. And he was walking along doing this, shaking his bag of chips and just had the happiest smile on his face. And I thought, that's it. That's the why. That's the why. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing this. It was little Tyler in Appomattox. He was so happy. And it's just like, oh, I was going to capture this moment. I've got to tell Rachel about this because this is our why. This is our why. Because here's a kid that just didn't want to do anything with anybody, nonverbal, just wanted to be isolated, and just literally skipping across the T.E.A.M. I do want to talk more about the dating program. I mean, everybody needs to involve their group in this dating program. Usually it's Gail and I, and it's Gail and I and a couple of yeah, we got a core group. Okay, we got a core group that needs expansion, and it's facilitated by those that are on the spectrum, special needs, and they're sharing what they do in their dating relationships. And that's so important because, again, everybody's a selfish silo, right? We're all in our own silos. We're all wanting what we want. And sometimes it's hard to step out of our silos to figure out what other people need. So when I'll just say for purposes of this conversation, higher functioning guys, they want what they want. So in their dating experience, maybe that opening phrase is, hey baby, do you like sex? Okay. So that could be a conversation stopper. Okay. So in talking to this group about dating, they would then instruct, well, hey, have you ever thought about maybe asking what, her favorite color is? Or what's her favorite thing to do? Or does she have a favorite song? And this is their peers talking. So it's one thing if we say it, but it's something else if their peers say it. So I just can't say enough about this program. I send it out. It's kind of late. I'm hoping that maybe if we moved it up a little bit, because we could, if we moved it up, then, because our guys are starting their, nighttime routine at 7, 8 o'clock. Also, there's a speaker that we'd like to get here for next time. It's someone that we work with, Dr. Michelle Garcia. She actually works with law enforcement when someone with special needs has perpetrated against another person in a sexual way, and yet they don't understand what that is. They don't understand what they've done. They don't know, I'm 20 and she's 14. They don't understand that. Where they are maybe forcing themselves on someone. They're not understanding. Again, we're all in our selfish silos. So she is working with law enforcement to help better understand the IDD community. And I agree with you, Gail. I don't know where they come up with the acronyms, because now they call DAHAB ISS, which for the longest time meant, and still does, in-school suspension. So I think it gives kind of a negative connotation to what the groovy things we're doing here. So also on your table, you're going to see little cards like this. These are your wonderful cards. And so if you want to open it up and see how wonderful you are, then we just want you to know that and how much we appreciate you coming out to be with us today. And lastly, something that Gail said that was so poignant is waiting for somebody else to fix it. You wait 20 years for your slot, and then Tri-County or Harris Center gives you a piece of paper and says you've got 30 days to find a place, good luck. And half those numbers aren't even active anymore. So that's something that we understand as people are trying to look for a community living environment. It's a traumatic experience. We have parents that literally live a couple of blocks over from the group home that their child is in. And there are pangs of guilt, but they just aren't physically able to care for that person. It's not sloughing off. It is taking advantage of a resource. But I understand parenting, guilt is our pet emotion. So, if there's guilt to be found, we're going to identify with it. So understanding that places like Team Ability, Special Angels, resources, Project Beacon, or resources. So as you're looking for a place, it's important to ask all those questions. Take extra time. I was telling Rachel yesterday, someone came in to tour and it was, over 3 hours. And that's just to get things started, because there's so many questions that, it's just trying to find someone captive long enough where you can ask all your questions. I always say, I'm a text or a phone call away. You're going to think of a lot more questions as we go along. Just text me. I'm going to answer you. You've got us. We're here. So it comes down to advocacy. What I love about Gail's story, and thank you so much for your vulnerability and for sharing, is that we have to advocate for ourselves. We have to try our best to help our loved ones with special needs advocate for themselves, which when I was talking about the young lady that watches TV, who screamed all the time, that was her form of advocacy. she's screaming, letting you know something is not right. But it's important to advocate for ourselves. It's important for our loved ones with special needs to advocate for themselves. But then we can also take advantage of resources where they can help us to advocate. Again, we don't know a lot of the questions to ask to get the resources that we need, to find out what exactly do we need and how does all that figure in. I mean, just even some of the things that, here I've been with Rachel, 8 years and still, I mean, some of the things that Gail was talking about, I was like, wow, I really didn't know about that. So, I mean, because there's just so many things. So that's the purpose of today. And hopefully this is something that will grow and grow and grow, because it really is connecting the dots. It's these private conversations that we're having of, why is it like this? Why don't we do this? And literally these people are right here that can help us. Why can't we just, why can't we just utilize them? Why do we have to go all the way around and be frustrated? So I had a conversation with Connie, who's coming up. And actually, she had spoken with Rachel. Rachel says, hey, you got to talk to this lady. And she blew me away. She blew me away with her depth of knowledge and her own advocating spirit. And basically, if I had to sum it up, it's like how to be the CEO of your child's life, your child's trajectory. It's how do you begin to map that out? How do you begin to plan? We wouldn't start a business if we didn't have some kind of a plan. Same with our loved ones with special needs. So we kind of have to have a plan. Like Gail was saying, this is what Special Olympics looks like now. What happens when it's this? What happens when it's that? There are a lot of our parents that have their loved ones come to T.E.A.M, but I'm always asking them, have you thought about a longer term solution? Because it is coming. It's not maybe, it is coming. We're gonna have to think of a longer term solution. And so I'd like to welcome Ms. Connie. Thank you for coming up with.
First of all, I want to thank Gail for speaking. And was the biggest takeaway for me is how I resonated with a lot of what she said. I think when I think about the journey that I'm about to talk about, I know that you will hear that my journey may not be exactly like yours. However, I think that the vulnerability that we have to have and we just inherently feel when we tell our story is really powerful for others out there. And so I just want to thank you for that. It meant a lot to hear it. I think advocacy groups for caretakers are so important. I know that I'm going to talk a little bit in my story about how that should have been something I looked for early on and just didn't know, or was insecure to do, or was scared to share our story. But since the more I've talked and the more I've advocated and told his story, I think I'm helping others, and I wished I would have had that person for me. So thank you, Gail, for doing that. I just want to start off with giving a staggering number, and it's like 43 million people in America today have a disability. And I think what's interesting about that is 1 in 36 children today are being diagnosed as autism. And we know that primarily it's found more in boys than girls. And I am a mom to a 25-year-old son, and I have a 23-year-old daughter. And my son, Trey, is the autism statistic. He has autism, but his sister does not. And so when I became a mom, I envisioned this picturesque moment where I was going to have this baby and I was going to raise him, and he was going to hit all of his milestones. He was going to have so many friends, and he was going to be invited to birthday parties, and we were going to have these group of friends that my husband grew up with. We were all raising our kids together, and they were going to love each other, and he was going to be embraced. And what I imagined, some of what came true, but a lot did not. And Trey's story his life has not always been easy. And now that he's 25, I can look back and see just how far he's come, and I'm so proud of him. But I share a story today. It's gonna be a vulnerable time, but I share a story because I hope that the parents that are embarking on this journey and navigating these waters that they didn't ask for can just hear something in me or something in Gail that resonates with them and gives them the encouragement that they need to continue going down this path. Because we know this journey is going to be treacherous. We know it's going to be scary and lonely. We know it's going to be isolating, but it's also going to be hopeful, and it's going to be rewarding, and it's going to be inspiring to others. And so that's what I hope that you take away from this. I know as parents that are on this journey, we become very hardwired very quickly to become strong, defiant, and determined. And I'm going to talk about the defiantness a little bit because I think that was something that I learned very early on to do. I know that this journey has tested our marriage, my sanity. It has made me sit around a lot questioning the why. Like, why did I have a child with something wrong? What did I do wrong? I remember I went all the way back to college. Like, should I not have done that? Was I a bad person to other people in my life? Like, why didn't you punish me? Why are you punishing him? Because I knew his life was going to be very difficult. And I saw Gail tear up when she tells her story. And it's very much the same thing when I tell mine. And not because it's so sad, because it's just heartbreaking as moms that you can't fix a problem that you wish you could make their life a little bit easier. And there's no fixing it. So we have to learn how to work with it and how to better support them. So I tell Trey's story today to offer hope. When Trey was born, he was our firstborn, and his dad and I did not meet until after college. So we were educated, we both had jobs, we planned him, all the things that the good parent should do. He was loved, his nursery was ready, I took the prenatals, I went to all the doctor's appointments, we talked to him, read to him, loved him. He was born 8 pounds, and he had a pretty traumatic birth just because it took a while to get him here. But he was so loved and so adored. And because we were new parents, I think we just were in blissful love with him. And we missed a lot of the early signs that I think we would have seen if he would have been baby number 2 or baby number 3. And so with him, the one thing that I noticed is that for all intents and purposes, he started babbling early. He was a little developmentally delayed on his rolling over, but boy, we got in there and we started working with him, and he soon hit all his milestones, sitting up, crawling, walking, all of those things he did well. But around the age of about 3 months to about 9 months, he suffered a lot of ear infections. And so he stopped talking. And I didn't really think much about it at the time because I thought he has a lot of fluid on his ears, he's just not hearing things. So at 9 months old, he got tubes in his ears, but around probably the age of 18 months old, they took his adenoids out. And I thought at that time that that's gonna fix all his problems. But what we started noticing is just that he wasn't talking. I was pregnant with his sister, and I would give birth to her when Trey was 2 years old. Also at that time, I started working on my master's, which I think we talk about God things, and I think I was not the best student in college with my bachelor's. I will just say I wasn't real focused. I was more focused on extracurricular activities. And so when I got pregnant and I started having kids, my life became very focused, and I grew up very quickly, even though I was 26 years old whenever I had him. And so I guess I'm like 28 at this point. I'm gonna go back and get my master's. And I always had a love for children that were more difficult. Those were kind of behaviorally. Those were the kids that I could relate to. But whenever I had Trey, he completely changed the trajectory of my life. And I know that he was handpicked to be my kid, because he was going to need somebody to be defiant and determined and push back on all the nevers that we would eventually hear. So after his sister was born and I was working on my master's, he still wasn't talking. And we noticed very quickly that sister was closing the gap between the developmental milestones that we could see him doing versus what she was doing. And it became very apparent we had an issue. Now keep in mind, 20-something years ago, autism wasn't the buzzword or the highly diagnosed disability that we hear today. And so we had never heard of autism, hadn't ever met anyone with autism. And he was in ECI, which is early childhood intervention, that we were, exposed to through his pediatrician. We lived in Conroe at the time, and I was working for Conroe ISD, and he was getting ECI. So he was getting speech therapy, play therapy, OT, PT, and we just thought, this is what he needs. This is gonna fix him. He'll do this for a little bit and he'll be okay. And we were happy with that. Our life was jamming. We were raising kids. We were so in love with our kids and so in love with our life. However, he still wasn't talking. And, but he seemed to communicate. I mean, he didn't really, looking back probably on his videos, that's more apparent then or now than it was at the time, but he kind of was around in a room. So he wasn't really interacting with his sister, but he was playing around her, and he was communicating with us through maybe grabbing our finger and taking us into the kitchen and pointing and grunting. And we would kind of, do you want milk? Do you want that? We were just trying to make him happy. And we knew he would probably just need the gift of time. So around probably 2.5, almost 3 years old, we were in the mall, and he was in one of those little umbrella strollers. We were pushing him around, and I had gotten out of his sight, and he said, Connie, not very clearly, but you could tell he was referencing me as something. And we were like, oh my God, did he just talk? Is he calling me Connie? And so ironically and sweetly, both my kids call me Connie today. But it was at that time that we started recognizing that people that had maybe a little contact with us, maybe a lot of contact with us, were giving their opinions about how we needed to parent him. They didn't think it was okay that he called me Connie. They thought it was very disrespectful. But to me, it was very endearing. I mean, it was as close to mommy as he could get. And we knew that all the muscles in his mouth had atrophied because he wasn't talking, and he couldn't say mom. And Connie was a very lazy word. And so I love it. And when I get to be a grandmother, that's what my grandkids are gonna call me. And so it just became something that I knew very quickly that I would need to defend when somebody corrected him to say, no, that's not Connie, that's your mom, or that's your mommy. I'm like, leave him alone, I miss Connie. So that's when my husband and I really realized that whatever path we're on, we cannot compare that path to all the play dates. We're all getting together and they're, setting their kids down, and their kids are eating sliced up grapes and meat, and my kid is getting Cheetos and chocolate milk because that's what he's been eating for the last month, and that's all I've been able to feed him. We learned very quickly that we were going to have tough skin because we were going to be judged for every decision we made that didn't fit the social norms. So around 3 years old, he would become part of the school district. So prior to that, ECI takes over, and then a couple months before their 3rd birthday, they become into the school system. So at the school system, they had to redo all his testing. And that's when the first time we ever heard the word autism. And I remember getting the call, just fell apart. I was devastated. And immediately I was like, okay, how can I fix this? Because I'm a fixer and my husband's a calmer. And those two things I think work really well, except I expect to fix things. And he expects to calm things. And this just wasn't something I immediately could fix. So the school district's like, oh, he's gonna go in he's pervasively delayed, he's intellectually delayed, he's, all of these things. And he needs to go into a pervasively delayed classroom where, in my opinion, was a very restricted environment, and he was going to be around other profoundly disabled children. And we didn't know what his future was going to be, but as an educator, I knew that I did not want him in the most restricted environment. I wanted him in the least restricted environment. And so we were at a pass. And so that's when I decided that I can be determined, I can be headstrong, and we're going to start guiding his ship. These people that don't know him and they did a quick snapshot of his life are not going to be the one that steer his journey down this ocean, because it's just not going to work for him. And his dad and I made a conscious effort at that point that we didn't know what his future was going to be, but we knew we loved him, he was wanted, and we were going to teach him until. We didn't know how long until was going to be, and we didn't know what he was capable of, but we knew that all we knew was love and patience and kindness. And I tell my husband all the time that God knew what he was doing by giving my husband to Trey, because my husband is a very muscular guy and he's so gentle. And my husband, just like I, was raised in a small town where spanking was a big deal. And I think that if Trey would have been born into any other family who did not have the philosophy of gentle parenting, we would be probably looking at a very different situation. And I'm not here to, give my opinion about spanking, because everybody has their way of disciplining their children. But I'm just saying, for our family, gentle parenting worked for our kids because they were gentle kids. And we were able to raise children that way. Again, another thing that became something that lots of people would give their opinion about. So we just had to be very steadfast in how we felt. And it's not to say that there weren't tons of tears behind the scenes, because there were. And it also made our group of people that I thought were our friends and family becomes further and further and further away. So that isolation and grief that parents feel become enormous when you're dealing with these milestones, because the gaps get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think, back to how optimistic we were, I quickly learned that optimistic was not going to be the adjective that we really needed to be. We needed to show some perseverance, and that would be the adjective that described us as parents. So we had to figure out what that looked like for us, and we had to figure it out quickly, because it could become something that destroyed our marriage, destroyed our families, and harmed our kids if we didn't get it together. Another thing too, about that time, was we had heard about the Bluebird Clinic. The Bluebird Clinic is a renowned autism clinic in downtown Houston. And at the time, our pediatrician was like, I think that's where you need to go. Okay, that's fine, I'll get there. Well, I'll call him up and I'm like, my son's gotta get in, he's gotta see you. And they're like, okay, it's at least a year waiting list. And I was like, okay, what about the wait list? She's like, ma'am, you have to call every single day. If somebody cancels and you can get down here, then we'll get you in. Okay. So then that became my mission, to call them every single day that clinic was open until he got in. And it became a kind of a running joke between me and the receptionist, because she'd answer the phone. I'd say, good morning. And she'd say, Connie, not today. Not today. And I did this for 6 months. But about the 6-month mark, I got a call that said, somebody canceled. Can you get down here? And we dropped everything and we went. And that meant that we were gonna have to be down there for several days, because he needed to go through a string of battery of tests where he did sleep study, seizure disorder. We ruled that out. We did an MRI on his brain. We did OT, PT, speech, psychological, everything, the whole battery of tests. But what came back was the diagnosis of autism, OCD, intellectually disabled. He's got some attention problems. He's never going to live on his own. He's never going to marry. You need to figure out what his life is going to be like as he gets older. You need to start thinking about that now. You need to get him on interest waiting list. So we were told really quick about what the nevers were going to look like. And we were devastated. I mean, it was a punch in our gut. And when we tried to express how we were feeling to our friends and family, they were not receptive to hearing that this was going to be a journey that they had not envisioned. And while my husband and I were both grieving, my husband was grieving what he had envisioned his son's life to look like. I was grieving because I felt like I had done something wrong. I carried him and I was supposed to protect him, and I didn't take the vitamins like I was supposed to because they made me sick, or I drank too much in college, or all the things that a mom is going to do who loves their child and it's going to take on that hurt and that worry and that fear and just feel so guilty about it. And so when we realized that we were really struggling to find our place with family and friends who we knew loved us, they just were completely not on board with this diagnosis. My husband and I decided at that time that we would never speak the word autism again to anybody outside of our family, because it didn't change Trey. It didn't change our love. It didn't change how we were going to parent him. It didn't change what his future might be. All we knew was we were going to love him and we were going to try to do the best by him. And when he failed, we were going to pick him up, love him some more, dust him off, encourage him, and send him back out into the world. So about the time he started kindergarten, we were here in Conroe ISD, and we knew that the only place that he was going to go was into that pervasively delayed classroom. And we made a decision that we would completely uproot our life. I would quit my job, I would take a year off, and we would move him back to my husband's hometown. And when I say we live in a small town, the population is like 816. It's small. It's called Lovelady, Texas. And the thing that town offered us was a sense of belonging. They didn't have any understanding of autism. When Trey started kindergarten, he was the only kid that had ever entered kindergarten with an IEP. They didn't know what to do. And then they've got this sassy little mom coming in saying, this is what's going to happen. Like, this is what he needs. This is what's going to happen. We don't have that. We don't have the budget for it. This is what's going to happen. This is what we're going to do. This is how it's going to work. And my husband was from that town, and when he graduated, he was valedictorian, Mr. LHS. So you can imagine, the dilemma he was in is like, I've got to fight for my son, but I'm also, that's not inherently who I am as a person, but something feels like I have to dig a little deeper and do what's right for my son. So we moved there like a couple days before he started kindergarten, and kindergarten was rough. Kindergarten was rough because Trey had never been in any kind of daycare setting or school setting. He had a private lady that kept him in our home, and we're really sheltering for a lot of reasons. But what we thought we were doing that was going to protect him really probably in hindsight wasn't the best for him. So when he started kindergarten, he really struggled to fit in. He was bullied. I remember this would be our first experience with bullying, and he was bit by a couple kids on his back shoulder. And then prior to that, he was tackled in a gym class and they broke his tooth. And so whenever he was bit and he was finally able to use the words to tell us who had bit him, I realized, oh wow, it's kids whose parents work at the school. That's fine. We'll just go talk to the school and they'll make it better. And what we realized was that's not what happened. He didn't get bit. And even though Trey's language was very limited and he wasn't articulating what had happened like other kids in his class, he was able to say who did it, when it happened, and that they were playing a game of a pick on Trey game. And so we went to the school, nothing happened, but what I realized is that really gentle guy that I had married dug really deep and convinced himself that maybe what he needed to do was maybe have a conversation with the dads of the kids in the town who were picking on his kid. And the bullying stopped, and it stopped immediately. And so I give my husband a lot of credit for doing that. Never asked him exactly what he said, but I know that had to be really difficult for him. So we would get through elementary, and I think that the gift of time worked well for Trey, even though he was very delayed. And retention was something that constantly was a conversation that constantly got brought up. I just made sure that I let everybody know that we're gonna mark him, and then we're gonna mark him again in 6 weeks or 3 months. And as long as his trajectory is moving forward, I don't care at what rate it's moving at. What I care about is that he has the ability to learn. And as long as he has the ability to learn, he's going to get what he needs at home. We're going to give more than what we're ever asking anybody to give, but you're gonna be on your game too. So with the gift of time and with a superpower that Trey has this superpower of memorization. So anything that he has read, he inherently can remember and file it away somewhere in a filing cabinet in his brain. So I learned very quickly that in Lovelady, they were primarily a phonics school. And I learned that he needed a balanced literacy, which just meant that he needed a combination of things he can memorize, like high frequency words like thee, that, we, when, she, saw. And then he knew he needed, his content core that they were teaching him of rhyming words. But until he was able to master that and hear that, I could maybe overcompensate with flashcards and memorization to get him to where it looked like he was reading until kind of all the pieces fell together. So we had something called Camp Baker at our house every day, and it's basically where we did OT, PT, school stuff. And by 3rd grade, I would say he was finally closing the gap of what I considered to be where he was close to being on grade level. And so this continued, and I felt like we were kind of in a good jam, and we were moving along. And then we get to junior high. And then just like Gail said, it's like you feel like you're coasting along, and then the bottom falls out, and you have no warning it's coming, and you really have no way to proactively react to the bottom falling out. But what we noticed happening was bullying happening again. Now keep in mind, up until this point, Trey's never heard the word autism in our home because we haven't spoke of it unless it was behind closed doors between his father and I. So Trey is now being bullied at school, and I can say that because I witnessed it. And what I witnessed was that the bulliers were the females this time in junior high. They were the females that were bullying him, but the boys were the ones walking by, knocking his books off of his desk or knocking his pen out of his hand. And Trey's a really kind-hearted, gentle soul like his dad, and he's pretty quiet, very quiet, I would say. Not shy, but just quiet. And he really wanted to just go unnoticed in the classroom. And that was impossible when you had girls teasing him and you had the boys being mean to him. So about the time bullying laws became on the books. And so I went to one of the main girls that I felt like was kind of the ringleader. And her mother, ironically, was a special ed teacher in Lovelady. Yeah. So I went to her politely and I said, this is what I've seen and this is what I feel like is going on. Can you help me? And she was very quick to tell me that he was the problem. He's very odd. He has trouble getting along. Now keep in mind, they haven't heard the word autism, but there's grumbling. They think something's going on. I mean, obviously the word odd is one that gets tossed around a lot. And so I was fuming mad, but being stoic and trying to not rehash past things that I had experienced in my younger youth, I tried not to use physical violence. So I used the bully law to my benefit. Once I filed that bully complaint, the school district was then forced to have to respond to it. And when they responded to it, they were forced to have to act accordingly to the Texas Education Code. And because of that, we were able to protect him. And I remember he came to us and he said, "Thank you, Connie, for for helping me with the bullying. I feel better. But what we were noticing is that he was getting really depressed because it was at the time where, you know, the distance between his peers were becoming evident. What the likes were and what the commonalities were getting bigger and bigger and bigger as he began to, you know, grow up. And so we had a conversation with our daughter and Trey at the time, and we told them that, and I'm crying at this time. I'm heartbroken that I have to share this, and I don't know how he's going to respond, but I tell him that he has something called autism. And I'm crying, and he looked at me and he goes, autism, what's that? And I told him the best I could describe, just, you know, that you have the superpower and that people may not understand you and that you like to be alone and you like to do things by yourself when others like to, you know, go to parties and go to dances, but that's okay. And he goes, huh? He goes, well, why are you crying? It's not like I'm dying. And I remember how profound that moment was for me as his mom, because that was the moment that I realized, what am I doing? I'm sitting here crying over something that he doesn't feel like I should be crying about. And I made a decision that day to make sure that I never cried again in his presence about the fact that he had autism. Because if he didn't see himself broken, then I for sure was not going to feel like he was broken. And so it would be a couple weeks later that he came to me and he said, oh, by the way, I researched that and you're right, I do have autism. And so I started seeing that balloon that was kind of getting about to explode in his little chest deflate, because he realized that this was why he felt so different than his peers. He was different and he was okay with it. He just needed to know why he was different. Now, keep in mind that Trey has always eaten lunch by himself. If you walked into the school cafeteria, you would always see him by himself. Now, as frustrating as that is to me, as an educator, as a school administrator, as somebody that, you know, was over low incidence disability and program fidelity, I asked myself, why would you allow him to sit here by himself? Why wouldn't you encourage other people to engage with him? Well, he doesn't want it. Well, okay, but everybody can see that he's sitting here by himself. So I also learned that I was going to have to make sure that I was also using these teachable moments to help encourage others who maybe didn't see things my way to see how he could benefit from other people sitting with him. You could encourage that interaction, even though he's uncomfortable with it and maybe he doesn't need it. So we get into high school, and this to me is when the gap is the largest. Trey is Trey's about 6 foot tall. He's blonde-headed, blue-eyed, tall, thin. If you look at him and he was sitting in a room, you probably wouldn't notice or even think that he had a disability until you saw him either talk, because he's pretty monotone, you saw him walk, or if you saw him stem, because he's going to stem. He's going to pace back and forth. We've really worked on a lot of what's socially appropriate, but I mean, when I'm not always there monitoring what is socially appropriate and reminding him of that, then he kind of always gravitates to what feels good for him. And, you know, you see a lot of that repetitive behavior. But when we got into high school, I really worried that if I didn't give him talking points that allowed him to be able to have some kind of commonality with his friends, we were going to be back in the same boat of what happened in junior high and what happened in in elementary school. Because at this point, he's doing okay in school. I mean, Trey's not the top of his class, but he was okay. He was doing fine. We were happy with what he was doing. We knew he was learning. We knew he was, you know, gonna be fine academically, because what he wasn't getting at school, his dad and I were supplementing at home, and we were fine with that. However, those talking points really became something that I really lost a lot of sleep about. And so one day I just had this epiphany that, what if I talked to him about taking a CLEP test? And so for those of you that aren't real familiar, a CLEP test, which I had only heard about in college because I wasn't quite studious enough to experience it myself, is when you think that you might have all the knowledge that you need to take a college course and you're willing to go pay the money and sit for the test. But if you pass the test, the upside of that is you don't have to take the college class and you get credit for that. And so this crazy idea, as you know, I knew it was an outrageous suggestion for sure, but it was also one that I thought, even if he, I mean, first of all, I will preface by, I had no idea he could pass the test. It was not even something that I felt like was even a reality, but I thought it would make for a good talking point. I felt like kids there are not gonna know what it is. And when they're talking about dating and driving and texting and their girlfriends, and he just feels like he needs to throw that out there, they're gonna kind of equate that with, wow, that's impressive. Not real sure what it is, but I'm sure it's true. So I talked to Trey about it, hadn't even ran this past his father yet. And I said, hey, bud, I heard this test. And so I explained what a CLEP test was. And he said, what will happen if I fail? And I said, well, first of all, it's only $80. And I was like, but what if you pass? You know, I'm just hyping him up. At this point, no intention or expectation that he's gonna pass. So he's like, okay. So he agrees to do it. I run it past his dad. His dad's just kind of rolling his eyes. He's like, oh, well, whatever. And but he also knew talking points were important. We were giving him something to try to find some commonality. So I work with the school district. I work with Sam Houston State University so he can sit for the test at Sam Houston. And I work with the disability office because Trey is attention deficit, so he got extended time on the test. So I took the day off work, drove him up there, dropped him off, and you're gonna do great, go in there. And I had chosen history because history is really Trey's love. He loves all things history. His dad loves all things history. I really can't tell you where, you know, Antarctica is on the map, or really even where North Dakota is, but they know everything about history. And so I thought it was pretty cool. And so I dropped him off, walked him in, he was good to go. And so I was like, you just call me whenever you come back. So I'd worked with a lady there, she had my number. So I get a call from him, and I was airing up a car tire whenever I got the call from him. And he calls and he says, Connie, I'm done. I finished my test. And I was like, all right, bud, I will be there in just a second. And he said, oh, and I passed my test. And I was like, woo. I mean, waterworks just started. I was like, I'm so proud of you. That's amazing. So I go to pick him up, and I mean, he doesn't even realize what accomplishments he has just done. He says, I passed the test. I'm like, Trey, your dad could not have even done this in college. Like, this is pretty impressive. So we call his dad. Of course, his dad's super thrilled. And then his dad's like, well, what'd you miss? You know, what was on the test? And so they go over everything, and I'm just like, okay. So the next thing I want to do is just see how far we can push this. So I sign him up for history 2. Again, his dad is kind of not really giving his opinion. So I sign him up for history 2, drop him off, he takes the test. He missed history 2 by 1 point. So he's like, I missed it by 1 point, but I don't know anything about women in history. And I was like, okay. So we have to wait. So Trey took his first CLEP test at 14. He takes his second test at 14, but he misses it by that 1 point, and he has to wait 3 months to retest. So in the 3 months that he's waiting, he turns 15, but we also go to the library and we check out all the books we can over that time period over women in history. So he tests again that 3 months later, and he passed history 2. And I'm like, woohoo! So I've done research the rules. Okay, how many hours can he test out of? Can he CLEP out of? And I'm just gonna push it to the limit. I think when I was in college, it was 12 hours. I think it's like 20 hours or 18 hours by this point. Could it even be more? I just knew it was a lot. So I'm telling his dad, all right, now he's gonna sign up for this. I think he can pass this. And his dad's like, whoa. He's like, if he can handle the rigor of college, he needs to go to college. And I was like, how? how is this going to happen? We live in the middle of nowhere. And at the time, still to this day, the most college classes that you could take at Lovelady ISD was 12 hours. That's 6 in the fall. I mean, 6 in, 6 in your junior year and 6 in your senior year. And the college rule really was you couldn't even go to college if you hadn't, even if you've passed your TSI until you were 15. So he was 15, so I've got to research all this. And his dad's like, I don't know how we're going to do it, but if we can figure it out, we will make sure that he gets there. So his dad and I committed ourselves to driving him to the local college and sitting in the car while he took a lot of these college hours. And his junior year, he was taking 9 hours. His first semester, his fall semester, when he was already taking an 8-period day at school. That's crazy. And I couldn't do it, but what the goal was not that he made an A or a B or a C, but that he just passed. Because again, we're looking for a way for him to kind of push his chest out a little bit with his peers, because they're all playing football and they all have girlfriends and they all have a life, and Trey really doesn't. And so this went on. And so when Trey graduated high school, he had over 30 college hours. So when he went into college, he was a sophomore. And I know that a lot of kids today are doing the same thing when they're in the big school districts, and that's amazing. But for where we were, he was the kid that had the most college hours that had ever gone to Lovelady, because he was doing this outside. He didn't have the option of being able to take these classes in school. So that happened in high school. Then he was volunteering a lot, which was like just dragging him along like a donkey. We did a lot of volunteering. He hated every minute of it, but I felt like it was so important for him to just socialize, for him to be empathetic, all the things that are, for him to have some sense of responsibility, but also to have those hours of volunteering and giving back to the community. And as time went on, he became okay with it. And then the other obstacle that we had to run across in high school was driving. You know, is he going to drive? Is he going to be able to handle, his processing speed is a little bit slower than most. And that really concerned us, because he's very trainable. And once you teach him, he's going to kind of do the same thing over and over. But it was all the unknowns. It was all the people going up the wrong way, up the parking lot in Walmart, or running the stop sign that we really couldn't account for. That was scary. And so I did the online driving class with him, and he made almost a perfect score on his driving test. But when it came to passing his driving test, he failed it like 3 times. So then I'm digging in, trying to figure out what the rule is if you fail more than 3 times. Eventually he got his driver's license, and so he is able to drive very short distances, and he does fine with that. But it's still a challenge driving, because he gets very overstimulated. He gets very nervous. He really doesn't drive much. And he really prefers to be in the back seat of a car on his phone whenever he drives. So all the challenges and things that we all know to be true is things that he experiences. But now he's in high school, and we have to figure out what the next path is. And I heard Gail talk about transition. You know, when the kids are in school, it's really easy to kind of know what the plan of action is, because it's pretty laid out. You may not always agree with it, but they have a pretty good plan that you can follow if you want to stick to the norms. The problem with us is that now we've got a kiddo that's got a lot of college hours. We know he's capable of handling maybe the rigor of the college schedule, but what he's not able to handle is this calendar, staying organized, living on his own, driving, socializing, all of those things. So what do? And in those transition meetings, I hear a commonality whenever I do a lot of autism advocacy stuff with parents, and that is they know a lot, but are they always the best at getting that information out to the parents, disseminating that information? And sometimes that's not always happening. And in our case, it just wasn't. And I remember feeling like I collected a lot of carts and a lot of horses, and I didn't know which one went first. I didn't know if the horse went before the cart or what, and I just didn't know. And so I just kept collecting them. And then we got to a place where I heard about vocational rehabilitation and got in touch with them. And that's when I finally think that the transition of where kind of Trey's next steps were going to go kind of opened up for him. And so whenever he went off to college, he did get a 4-year scholarship, an academic scholarship, based off of, not because he was top of his class and not because he was, even, I don't even think he was the top half of his class. But what he was he was able to demonstrate that he could handle the rigor of college and that he had already handled some of the, he had already had these classes behind him. So he got a 4-year academic scholarship, which was amazing. And then vocational rehabilitation came in and they paid for his housing. So he was able to be housed in Huntsville to attend college. Now, ideally, probably what would have been best is if he would have been in a dormitory. And I did explore that, but the issues were with that was he is not going to be a good roommate with somebody else. And there wasn't an option for him to be in a dormitory where he could be by himself, despite the fact that he had a disability. So that was kind of a hurdle that we had to overcome. And so the way we kind of dealt with that, and very thankful for vocational rehabilitation services, is we were able to house him in a off-site apartment. And then we were able, he had a shuttle, and then I would push the services in. So I stayed with him once a week. During finals, I would stay with him the whole time, study with him. I became his study buddy. I kind of managed his time, managed his, I'd take his syllabus and I'd kind of all lay them out. And as amazing as it is that he's been able to do all these things, I don't want it to be lost on anybody that it was easy, because it was not. In the systems, within the systems of the school is what makes his life so difficult. It's not the rigor, it's the systems that we all create. And I know we're gonna talk about systems later, and I think most everyone's questions that they have are really, how do you navigate the systems that are created that make obstacles very difficult for somebody with a disability? And so my job was always to eliminate those obstacles, not do the work for him, not make him not responsible for his own actions, but just kind of move those obstacles out of the way and kind of address them as I'm teaching him to have autonomy and advocating for himself. And as I kind of modeled that for him, he's gotten great at it. And I heard Gail say earlier, when you first kind of start this, you're in the front and you're the protector and the defender and the defiant one. But then as they learned to be self-aware and take on ownership of their own life, as difficult as that can feel sometimes, because it may not always be the way in which we want it to be or at the pace in which we want it to be, they start to do that. And then as for him, whenever he got better at it, I was able to step back and be like, man, he even does it better than me, because I go in very hard and like a little pit bull, and he is really calm and articulate and able to really talk from a personal standpoint. And he really does a pretty good job for that. So he was able to graduate with a bachelor's of science in biology and chemistry. Yeah, pretty amazing. Then we then had the dilemma, okay, we've got him educated, but he has no work experience. And I mean, what do we do now? And then his dad and I and Trey talked about, you're going to be competing in the workforce with people that have been working through college. And he wasn't able to juggle both of those. He was very able to do college or work, but not able to do either one. And we always opted for the college route. Get him out of college and then we'll address that obstacle. So now we've got him educated. He's not ready for the workforce. He really is not confident in that he even knows what he learned in college. So how do you feel about getting your master's? What do you want to get your master's in? So then we talked about that. So he ends up getting his master's in biology, and he finished about a year. So December, a year ago, he finished. and he did his thesis over, I hope I'm gonna get this right, over Gregorian infections found in damselflies. So damselflies are teeny tiny little dragonflies, and he, with his dexterity issues, was able to dissect that damselfly under a microscope, pull out the guts within the damselfly, and look at the intestinal parasites found in them. And that's what his research was over. Now, I will tell you that he never got in the water one time. He didn't have the dexterity to use the net, but he had a mom that he could boss around. And I was his lab assistant. And so, you know, even though he's able to make these great strides, there's a lot of things that we have to work through. And there's a lot of things that we run across that's just not easy for him, but we've got to figure out a way to make it work. So he's graduated. We are now in touch, still working very closely with vocational rehabilitation, and he has been doing internships since December of last year. Now, I say that because it has not been all sunshine and rainbows by any means. The first internship got cut short. I think a lot of things that we would all expect was going to happen happened. I don't think that they had the time or the resources or the knowledge on how to work with somebody with autism. So instead of like giving feedback to him, they just cut his internship short. Then he did another internship where I feel like we could have been a little bit more rigorous, but now he is in an internship where he is in Tomball. He lives in an extended stay hotel in Houston. I go and get him he works, so under the paid work experience, under vocational rehabilitation, and this is, Gail kind of alluded to this earlier, you can start it at the age of 14 and it can continue until. So just know, if you know somebody out there that's looking for some type of paid work experience, the paid work experience is paid through DARS, and they pay for them to get a job. And what the purpose of this is for them to have the gift of time to learn the skill needed to become employable. And it is an incentive for job people to hire them without running the risk of it being an expense to them. So Trey gets paid $20.32 an hour, which I think is pretty amazing. And they pay for his extended day hotel. Now, a couple issues that we've had there is that he lives off of Louetta right now, and there's some extracurricular activities that happen on the weekends where a lot of people influx to that area. There's some adult entertainment out there that comes, oblivious that we have an influx of this coming in every weekend. So his dad and I are committed to making the 3.5-hour drive there and back to pick him up. On Thursday, I'm there as soon as he gets off work, which is at 4 o'clock. I take him home with us. We are, like I said, in Lovelady, Texas. And then every Sunday evening, we do all his meal prep, wash all his laundry. He wears scrubs every day, so that's nice. And we bring him back. The reason why he is at the facility where there's extracurricular activity is because it is within walking distance of his job. It's like 0.4 of a mile. And we have practiced walking there. We've practiced what to do on like a rainy day. So all of these hard and soft skills that he's learning are so imperative to his success for life. And I, it was really quite inspiring to really hear Gail's story today, because yesterday I had a moment that wasn't probably my finest moment as his mom and as his number one advocate. And that is because I got an email from his work that just had a laundry list of things he needs to work on. And I'm thinking to myself, did you tell him? Did you tell him at all? And the answer was, no, I'm telling you. Okay, well, why aren't we telling him? So as his job coach, I'm not only coaching him on all these hard and soft skills, I'm also coaching his supervisors on what I wish they would do better. And it just starts with communication. Like, why is that like aha moment for me to tell you that he deserves the dignity and respect for you to tell him that these are the things he needs to be working on. Because I mean, I can tell him, but at the end of the day, I'm his mom. And when we talk about resources, this is where I've struggled, and I see a gap in the resources for those that are able to work and that are going into the work environment. We are not preparing our work people for embracing people with disabilities. You know, we've come a long way and we've done a great job with the physical disabilities that we can see, but the ones that are not physical, we struggle. And autism happens to be, in my opinion, the one that's the trickiest to figure out. Because in Trey's case, he can look like he's got it all together. I mean, he's on time to work because, you know, he's going to make sure he's on time to work. He's going to skip breakfast to get there on time. But he's also going to want to walk out at 4 o'clock because you've just told him his work day is from 8 to 4, and that's what we're struggling with at work. Trey works in a blood lab, and he is responsible for, you know, doing all that. When you go and get your blood taken and then they come back and they tell you this is what your numbers are. Well, he's on the back side of things. And so whenever he started this internship, it was really important for me that they knew that he had zero experience, and just because he had a master's degree, he didn't get to walk into this company, in my opinion, and get that job. He needed to start at the bottom where he learned all of these things. And although he's struggling a lot with kind of the work environment, the soft skills that he's learning, you know, living on his own, having to heat up his food that we've meal prepped for him, deciding if he needs to go ask for more towels from the sweet lady at the front, expecting that maybe traffic's going to slow me down, and depending on what I-99 looks like, I may get there at 4 or I may get there at 6. I'm going to try my best, but like, we all have to work together to figure this out. And he's going to have to learn what the expectation is, because for him currently, he just doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. And, you know, I heard Gail say the same thing, like as his parent, we want to guide them in a direction, but I feel like I'm gonna guide him in the wrong direction. And I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders to do right by him. But it would be helpful if he had an opinion. And his opinion is kind of just what he doesn't like. And so currently I'm just kind of navigating those waters and trying to expose him to as many things as I possibly can to see if there's just something that he likes. But we are struggling with being a risk taker, having confidence, knowing that you're not expected to learn everything. But I think also to asking supervisors and kind of accepting that maybe not all supervisors are as understanding with disabilities as I had hoped, and just recognizing that bullying and workplace segregation and isolation is true, and what is that going to look like for Trey, and how can I, on the flip side of things, work through that so he finds validation in his life. And if this doesn't work for him, what is that going to look like for his dad and I? And that was a conversation that we had yesterday through lots of tears. I was like, is he going to make it? And I don't know what the answer is. I think we have a lot of stumbling blocks, and it is not lost on me that we have a big journey ahead. So I appreciate y'all taking the time to listen to my story. And I just want to tell you, when we know better, we do better. So I hope that everybody feels like you have a voice today, and whether you learn something or you have something to offer, I think at the end of the day, we're all creating safe spaces for people with disabilities. And I think that that's what our mission is. So thank you so much for having me.
So next up is our fearless leader, Rachel Jelks, who began this business in 2010. We are our 14-year anniversary. Thank you. And, you know, just as talking with people with special needs, having starts and stops and internships cut short, or, you know, that type of thing, you know, Rachel also had her share of starts and stops until we really got team abilities to flourish. And it's, sometimes through your non-successes, or we just call them outcomes, through your outcomes, you figure out what's the right thing to do. So, like I said, we've got 20 group homes. We have a robust ISS program, and that comes with a lot of hard work and planning. And I present to you Rachel Jelks.
Good morning, everybody, and thank y'all for coming out on a Saturday. And I know everybody has things to do, but I appreciate y'all coming out. This is our first annual Team Abilities Conference, where we're trying to build bridges, close the gap, just kind of, help everybody and get resources. I mean, even just today with Gail, I was taking notes, and that's my daughter that sits next to me. I'll introduce her in a minute. About ours, that you have to have art when they turn 18, because in the last few years we've been introduced to teenagers. I have about 5 teenagers in my community living homes that are in school, and we have to do art meetings, and we have to do everything that they would do as high school, the proms and homecomings and also the art meetings and the IEPs and all that stuff. So that's been new to us, because I've always had, my guys have been like 20s, 30s. So now I've got 14, I had 40, I have they're 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, which is different for us, but we're just going with the flow. We're gonna, take care of them the same way, get them ready for school every morning. So I learned that from Gail today, just in also too about the word for specialized instructions and not daily living skills. I like that word better. So Team Abilities, again, was started in 2010. Well, actually I had Team HCS in 2010, and in 2014 I started Different Abilities around that time, but then we ended up combining them. So that's why it was Team HCS and Different Abilities was our day program. Now we're just Team Abilities. So I took the two and just put them together. With that being said, when I started in 2010, I just really wanted day programs. That's all I wanted to do was day programs. I wanted to create a space where people can come and make friends and just have a safe, happy place for people, because there's so many different living situations. Like you're saying, they live in houses where they have no clue about their abilities. They have no clue. So when they come here, we're their safe place. Where they're gonna come, they're gonna hang out, we're gonna do field trips, we're gonna volunteer. And that was my mission plan, was to be able to work, play, and live in our community. And so that was the main objective of the day programs. So I wanted to create them all over Texas. I just wanted to go around and just open up day programs everywhere. So in that, I opened up 2 or 3, didn't work, shut them down, kept trying to figure it out. But again, I never gave up on the day program, because that's what I wanted. So with that, I had one in Houston, and I get a call we had about 2 or 3 clients there. And I get a call, well, do you do group homes? And I'm like, no, I don't do group homes. So, she goes to your day program, and she just got kicked out of her home. She broke out every glass in the house. So she can't come back here. I said, okay, well, let me see. So I'm a risk taker. I'm gonna figure something out. Like Donna says, I'm always gonna figure something out. So I called my mom. I started looking for a house. So they gave us, I think, 30 days, to get her a home, actually, She went home with her family, and then she moved in with us. So I got a home in Humble. I borrowed money to start this home. The deposit, the first month, all the furniture. My mom moved in with the client. So I started this whole thing with my mom and one client and moved them into the group home. So that was in 2010. Again, I was working in the prison as a nurse. Me and my mom were sharing a car. And I had 3 kids. So we were trying to figure this all out. But again, I think that was my passion. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in this community. I wanted to build these day programs, and then the group homes kind of got thrown in there. That was not on my business plan. That was not. And again, to say now that we have 20. We have 20 homes now, and we call them our community living homes. We don't like to call them group homes because we set our houses up as roommates. You know, we want them to be, this is their home. This is, you know, their private space. These are your roommates. These, you know, it's not a facility. Let's see. I don't know if anybody knows, I don't have any biological children with any type of disability. So this is a God thing, because God had to drop this into me for this passion to, you know, to reach out and to be in this community. I started working in the field when I was 30. I started my own program when I was 32. So, but again, technically now I have about 70 children now. Children, guys, members, whatever they are my family now. So we have about 70 people in our program, and they're all our family. Some of them have family and some don't. We have some parents that are, you know, very involved, like Sir's parents. And then we have some, you know, that don't have family at all, and we are their family. Let's see. What else I want to hit on here? But again, it's the day program to work. And also, we're going to continue opening day programs. I have a board in my office, and it says 25 by 25. And everybody keeps asking me, what does that mean? So that means we're going to open up 5 new homes by next year. So we're going to have 25 community living homes in the year 2025. And I was like, we just can't keep all this to ourselves, because I think we are actually doing we run a really good program. Now again, like Donna said, we're not perfect. We're learning, we learn new stuff every day. But again, our goal is to have 5 new houses by next year and 3 day programs, 3 ISSs next year. So we're looking at locations here. But again, I want to work on more of our day programs, our ISS, where it has some kind of, not say purpose, but some kind of like a food pantry. So we're gonna have like a food pantry, and that's gonna be our ISS location. Or we might have any kind of other, you know, because a lot of our guys want to work, but then they can't work, or they can't be they can't be dropped off at an 8 to 5 job. Most of our guys, some can. We do have 2 that work in our restaurant, work part-time. But again, I want to work my ISS programs are some kind of food pantry. I don't know. My daughter wants to do a skate park, indoor skate park, ISS program. I don't know. We're trying to come to a coffee shop, somewhere like they can come. I mean, they're going to get their ISS hours and units there, but then they're also going to do other stuff. So it's still coming to me. The vision is still coming. But yeah, that is our why is our members. That's the whole thing. We do everything we do for our members. When we have our Tuesday corporate meetings, and I tell all of my guys, I'm like, hey, if I will throw in the towel the moment that we figure out that we can't do this no more. If we're not going to provide good service, good care to our guys, and I don't want to do this anymore. So that's kind of our Tuesday meetings, you know, like, hey, we got to do the best. And as long as we're doing our best that we can, I'm going to keep going with you. You know, we're going to keep doing this together. I think that was it. All I wanted to hit on, as there's our why, is like our members. We do like an annual, I don't know if anybody's heard of Brookwood. So we do an annual visit with them just to kind of get our juices flowing, or, you know, we love going to Brookwood. Like, I love going to Brookwood. They do it, you know, they do stuff a little different. They don't receive like government funding or anything. They're more of they have assistant living license. So another quick little story is there's this place called Main Street up here on 45 in like Cypresswood, between 1960 and Cypresswood. It's called Main Street. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it. But it used to be all like 20 different house builders. And they built houses behind this big building. And they had a restaurant, they had corporate offices in there. And then behind it is like, I want to say 20 houses. So I said, you know, that's my vision. We might move Team Abilities over there. Again, we wouldn't be able to do HCS there, but we could do assisted living. We can do just a variety. But there's like 20 houses just sitting on this piece of land that nobody's doing anything with. They were custom homes. I'm talking about the top of the line homes with heated floor. I went to visit one time when I was getting ready to buy a home. So I was just going there to kind of get some, see the ideas. They got heated floors and they had the top of the line, everything. I don't know if it got flooded over there or not, but I know they're still back there. They have a security guard. I'm gonna probably try to see if I can drive back there one day. So if y'all see me on the news, trespassing. It was, I think it was 12 million, which is not a crazy number. I had to do some crowdfunding or some kind of fundraising. But yeah, so an investor company bought it because we actually talked to them before we came to this building and about opening up, can we use a couple of your houses for our ISS program? So they entertained it for a little bit and then we got this place. So, but they don't know, I think they bought it, they don't know what they want to do with it. So it's just sitting there now. So yeah, that's my little story here. And again, thank y'all for coming out. We're about to have lunch and then Connie too. If Connie tells you how we met at a lovely day at Social Security. I don't even know how we started talking. I mean, I think I sat down, you sat down, we're sitting next to each other. And I don't even know how, but another God thing, because I took her information. I was like, we're having this conference. I'm going to give it to Donna. She's going to reach out to you. And then I saw you. I was like, ah! So again, lovely day at Social Security. We love going to Social Security. Oh my goodness. Yeah, Social Security, that's a whole nother beast there. But again, thank y'all for coming out. I hope y'all enjoy y'all's lunch. And then we'll meet up in just a little bit for questions and answers. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to get started. Keep our time integrity. Next we have Armando Bernal. He is with Autism International. We used to be neighbors down here at Pruitt. It's just like Connie and Gail are saying, autism can be kind of a catchword. And so really, what is it? I actually think everybody's on the spectrum. We have such a mixed bag in this world. I think everybody's on the spectrum. And but he's going to share with us on what his core competency is. And then Kelly's going to share what the competency is of Project Beacon. And then we'll take a few minutes and just kind of open the floor, ask some questions, get some of the resources that you need. Okay, Armando, come on up.
Who's ready for a nap after that food? That was delicious. Oh my gosh. So, like the introduction said, my name is Armando Bernal. I am the owner of Autism International Consulting. I'm also a board certified behavior analyst. I have been now with my company for about 2 years. I did it as a fun birthday gift for me. We decided to create a company. This is a family business as well as the only autistic-owned ABA company in Houston, Texas. So I was diagnosed at the age of 3. Doctors told my mother that I might as well learn sign language because I was never going to be able to speak. And if that's being said, I wouldn't be here today, right? So what I'd like to talk about is, again, another option or opportunity to better assist teenagers, adults, whatever it may be, in this community. Unfortunately, there are not many people that are willing to work with this population. Thankfully, we have Project Beacon, Team Abilities, many people like that are passionate to be a part of this, right? When my sister and I started this company, we wanted to do as much as we possibly could for the community as a whole, not just for early intervention, but also for the adolescents, the teenagers, adults, and we individualize it in a way that we can better support each individual that we see in that way, right? So what I like to do is go over not just what we believe in, but maybe a little bit of support or advice that could be given to parents as a whole, and then discuss further collaboration, right? So what gives me the right to be able to speak on this, right? As I said, I was diagnosed with autism because my mother jokingly was like, no, I'm not taking care of that boy after 18. We're gonna figure out a way to get him to be able to talk and do all of these things. We didn't have a lot of money to be able to work with applied behavior analysis at the time. In the 90s, it was a different time. It wasn't really covered by insurance, but she did have access to the free public library. And so she was able to find different books on autism to better learn how to support me. With that being said, my mother's belief in me has now transferred over to our company. And we do believe that the biggest support system is always going to be that guardian, that parent, that professional that can really define how an individual is able to grow, right? If you're able to believe in the child that you're with, or the adolescent or the adult, you can definitely see a growth in that way, right? As an example, we had a 7-year-old at my clinic who most certainly could feed himself at lunch and snack when we were with him. But anytime mom came to visit, he totally forgot how to use a spoon. And mom said that this was the only way that he was able to eat. Luckily, cameras are a great thing in the clinic, and we can show mom that is not the case, and being able to provide that, right? But that being said, right, if we can believe in the child and say, no, we can work with you together, right? Learn how to teach self-advocacy in these individuals, we can further support that kind of growth, right? It may be a slow kind of growth depending on the age development, right? And where we're at currently when we start working with a child, but it is certainly possible. Typically what I say is that autism as a whole is a regression of skills. It is not a wall. And so what that means is that it is not a full-on stop. It is possible to still learn things, and that's the kind of mentality that we use at my company. I'm also a certified teacher. I was in special education as a life skills teacher. And so myself, as well as a few of my other therapists and BCBAs, are also certified teachers. And so we provide that kind of knowledge. Our goal is always going to be, how do we get them back into the school, and how do we work ourselves out of a job? Because we want to make sure that we can do that, right? With applied behavior analysis, I'm not too sure how educated everyone is on it. There is, and I'm very transparent in this thing, there is a controversial past in what ABA is, or was rather, right? And so it is our goal, especially as being the only autistic-owned ABA company, to try and change that mentality on what ABA is in that way. So we're very collaborative in nature. We also are focused on our core competencies, our core values, our transparency, our self-advocacy. We want these individuals to be able to speak for themselves, be independent, and be able to work towards something. We had a 16-year-old. She was actually my first insurance patient, and I still connect with her family. When we were able to work with her mom told us that she would just be under her bed and just be on her phone, never talk to anybody. She was had depression, anxiety, bipolar, and then the autism diagnosis. At some point during the therapy, though, she went to her mom and said, you know what, Mom, I think I'm good. I think I've learned what I needed to. No questions asked. We said, look, if you think so, we're good. If parents are good, if she's good, that's awesome. Let's fast forward a little bit. She was now homecoming princess, has a job at a library, and it's just absolutely flourishing now. And she has an art business that is collaborated with her mom, and it's Artistic Visions by Emily. It's absolutely incredible. You sent a picture of, and this is not a plug for her, but it's amazing. You sent a picture of your dog, and she could do it freehand and make the exact same copy so you can have a portrait of your dog. So as we continue on, right, the idea for us is that an autistic individual is able to do so many different things. We also had a podcast right around 2020, when everyone else had a podcast around 2020, that did interview other individuals on the spectrum that showed all the possibilities of what an individual on the spectrum is able to do. Now we're a special education advocate for myself on the clinical side, for my sister, who's an 18-year veteran certified teacher as well in resource and life skills. And now we have 2 separate clinics that we do. So we see all ages, there is no age limit here. And we also see all insurances as well. And we collaborate with many people, which is why I'm here with Donna, who was gracious enough to invite me here today, as well as other speech therapists, occupational therapists, things like that as well. One of our clinics is ages 2 to 12. And then our second clinic, which is still on Pruitt Road, is 13 up, where it's either focused, part-time, or full-time. We just ask for that parent to still be present in this clinic. So a lot of the times what we do is that we do focused hours. So it's maybe a 9 to 11 shift or a 10 to 11, something where we can do exactly what the parent is needing. And this is just a funny anecdote for me. I'm very much excited about, we're gonna do painted walls and all of these things and all of that, right, with my littles. But when we got to the teenagers and the adults, the comment was, I don't have time for all of this. We need to get everything that is needed for these people to be successful, to be independent. And we said, say no more. So that is exactly what we try to do. We're very receptive to that feedback. We want to see how we can support those individuals. Our clinic is able to work on vocational skills, life skills, independent living, basic living, community skills. We go into the community. Anyone that follows Instagram, it's in the goodie bag with a QR code. We do have an Instagram. We went to the zoo with one of our littles. We go into job sites with them as well, being able to do all of those things. One thing that I wanted to have really open up and have people understand, statistically, in the next decade, according to the Autism Speaks website, there are about 707,000 to 1.1 million teenagers that are going to be into the adulthood very soon, and about 70,000 to 111,000 every year. Right. Of those, though, there are teens with autism that receive healthcare transition services half as often as those with other special healthcare needs. That is why we do what we do. We want to make sure that there is enough support for these individuals to make sure that they are feeling supported, that they are able to provide these things. Much more as well, nearly half of 25-year-olds with autism have never held a paying job. Why is that? I'll give my own personal example. I have been on multiple different performance plans or growth plans, right? Why was I on these? Because I was not social enough. As a manager, as a board certified behavior analyst, there was a penalty for me for doing a job in the daytime, but then being held as a consequence for not going into a happy hour or social group in the evening time, right? For someone that is autistic, there is a thing called masking. And for those that may not know, what that means is that there is some kind of face that we put on to be professional or to act appropriately with others in a more social appropriate setting. And it is very, very difficult. It's very exhausting to have that on past a work time, right? Another example for me, I went to a conference known as T.E.A.M. It's a very big behavior analyst conference. The amount of smiling, the amount of having to make small talk and all of that, I was in bed every day for those 3 days at 7 p.m. because I was all done and I was just spent at that point. And so it's very difficult, right? But what we want to try and do is provide support and knowledge for these individuals that we're working with to ensure that they can be successful and maybe work themselves up, much like a muscle, right? In that kind of way. We work through resume building. We work through going through Indeed. We work through inside thoughts versus outside thoughts. Because of that, we have been very honored to be able to work also with Texas Workforce Commission, being able to work with Tri-County, and we're soon to be working with a nonprofit known as Touch of Class, which is in the Tomball area. I see some smiling faces. Yeah, they are absolutely a wonderful group. And we are just very, very thankful that people have trusted us with their teenagers as well in that way, or their adolescents and adults. So with that, right, it's important to have an understanding of unemployment, right? What typically occurs is everyone really wants to support the littles because they're cute and adorable, but it doesn't quite transfer over to the adolescents, teenagers, and adults. And then it starts becoming this isn't my problem anymore. I want to help the littles, but I don't want to help the bigs. And when they get into the unemployment sector, they say, oh, they should have figured it out by now. But how can somebody figure it out if nobody's ever been there to help them or support them? In addition to that, we're very, very supportive of hiring other autistic individuals like myself in our staff. We hire our registered behavior technicians that are autistic, behavior analysts that are autistic, and it's just been an overall joy to see a lot of the individuals that we do serve. Also, it's a big compliment for me, say when I turn 18 or 20, whatever it may be, I want to come over here and work for you. And that is, I would say, a highest honor for any kind of company or a nonprofit in that way. As we continue forward, right, it's trying to support this high rate of unemployment and underemployment and give opportunities to work with other communities. But how do we do that? As we have already discussed here today, no one is able to do everything. It's going to be important to collaborate with other individuals. And again, there may be some issues if any professionals are here that say, oh, behavior analysts, they don't like to work with other people. And that unfortunate stereotype in that way is something that we, again, are trying to fight through, to try and provide the support and say, we can do this with you. It has to be an all-together thing because at the end of the day, we're all here for the same purpose. And it's really interesting to me when I do get that kind of feedback because I'd love to have anybody come and use my space. I welcome anybody. I'm just down Booty Road myself. I don't know exactly from here, but I always say 6 minutes from the Pruitt Road location. If you just turn a right and you go straight 6 minutes, you'll find us. So anyone's welcome, obviously, in that way. But as we continue forward, right, some information that I like to leave you with is understanding that anybody does anything for 4 reasons. They do it for escape, attention, sensory, or tangible. So what does that mean, right? And this also includes you and I. So an example of an escape would be we get a spam call, or maybe somebody calls us that we don't really want to talk to right now, and we swipe to the red phone and we cancel that phone call. That would be escape. Attention are always those funny moments where a child is tantruming, and you turn their back, and then they go around and then they start to tantrum again. That kind of situation, where we have, tangible is that you go to the grocery store and your child wants a toy and you say not right now, and they're like, I want it, and being able to do those kind of things. And then finally, sensory is me at the zoo. I love going to the zoo, and when I get to feed the giraffes, I hand flap. But also my wife likes to say that that's how she knows she got me a good Christmas gift, when I hand flap. There was also, on a side note, one year I didn't hand flap, and we were on the way back home from her parents' house, and she said, you didn't hand flap once. What was that about? Did you hate my gifts? And I was in a very awkward situation at that point. But that being said, right, the assumptions of behavior is understanding that behavior is communication. It may be inappropriate communication, but it is still communication nonetheless. And so the way we describe it here is understanding, especially with our teenagers or adults, where the hits are harder, or the bites or the meltdowns may be more intense, right? Is understanding that these behaviors are simply a need to describe attention and escape, it feels good, or they want something. And the example I give for this is usually if you're in, let's say, Germany. I don't know if anyone speaks German here, right? But you go to Germany and you ask for water, and you just say, hey, can I have a water? And they give you a water. You say, okay, now I have learned that I can just ask for water and I'll get it, right? But if they don't give it to you when you say, can I have a water, until you use the word Wasser, right, for water, and at that point, you have now learned, I can't say water to get what I want, I have to say Wasser. You have now learned that behavior to provide that need or want, right? And so that's the same concept when we think about more intense behaviors like tantrums or meltdowns or anything like that, is that if we are providing a communication form to them when they are providing this kind of knowledge, then they have now learned this is an acceptable form of communication. Whereas if they were able to use their words and we maybe ignore that instead, they would learn, oh, I don't need to do that. I need to hit, kick, bite to get what I want. And so that's the kind of knowledge that we use, right? Now, granted, and I've been saying this recently as we've started to get more, right? My littles usually are the hitters, the kickers, the biters, right? And so they may hurt on the outside, but the teenagers and adults like to hurt on the inside, and that hurts more. But they do it through attention and escape, and it's the same concept. Everything a person does, they speak, is through this kind of form of behavior. And so it's about how do we operate with that? How do we teach them what is socially appropriate, what is socially inappropriate? I worked with an individual in our belief system at our company. So this individual I worked with was in California, and she said, well, if they're talking in a rude way or a blunt way, then we should just accept how they are, right? And maybe it's a cultural thing for the Texas side of it, right? But in my experience, it's always been, they have to learn how to be socially appropriate. As much as we want the world to change for our individuals, I would anecdotally say probably we're just not there yet. And so it's hard, right? We have to teach our children how to adapt, and we continue to do that. And I think we can all also agree, though, that the world is changing in a more accepting manner. We do see a generation that is more accepting of saying, I have anxiety, I have depression, I have autism, which is really, really wonderful. But we are still needing to get to a point where we can provide that cool down or that belief system in our individuals to say, yes, I do have autism, but I do need to learn how to work with others, and I do need to learn how to collaborate with others to really achieve a goal that I'm trying to seek out here, right? So what can be done about these situations, right? We have to determine why our individuals are doing what they're doing. We have to determine what are next steps. How do we prevent it from happening in the first place? Rather than being reactive, we have to become more proactive. And so we can move forward with what we call antecedent interventions, right? The ideas of things that are occurring beforehand in order to prevent that big meltdown from happening. Typically, there is some kind of prerequisite that occurs before this big meltdown. And in which case, what that means is typically, maybe they're like, I don't want to, I don't want to do the dishes, right? And then after you ignore them and you say, do the dishes, that's when the big meltdown happens, right? We want to make sure we can provide as much support beforehand to get through it. And then also having some kind, if they are able to communicate a back and forth or functional enough, being able to have a conversation later on when they are happy, relaxed, and engaged in something, because that's how you're going to get the most out of somebody in a conversation. An example I give here is, imagine that you were very upset and somebody went to you and said, hey, you need to calm down. It's okay. You need to calm down right now. How would we feel? Very, very upset, probably more upset. They're like, well, I don't want to calm down now, right? So in that kind of situation, we have to use the same feelings and beliefs that we have as people is the exact same things that we need to remember for the individuals that we're serving, the individuals that we're working with, right? In addition, buy-in is so incredibly important. And that's something that we really believe in at my company, Autism International Consulting, is ensuring that those that are able to provide their beliefs, their ideas, their wants or needs, we're able to support that. I had a family that once came to me at a vendor fair, because we do quite a bit of vendor fairs and the interfaith conferences and things like that, where they came to me and said, well, I want my child to do this, and he was 12, the child. I want my child to do this, and I want him to do this and that and that. And I was like, that's great. What do you want to do? And he went to me and said, well, I just don't want to be the weird kid in school anymore. And that really hit home with me, because I was also the weird kid at school, right? But also because if I hadn't just turned to this individual, I would not have known that this meant so much to him. And he didn't once mention the things that mattered to the parent, which is fine. We can definitely work on those. But it is very imperative to try and involve that individual into what we're doing. Because again, if we talk about employment, we talk about any kind of job transition, they need to be able to believe in themselves, and more importantly, they need to be able to self-advocate for their wants and needs. Otherwise, they get into a situation where things are aversive. They start holding things in. They start to blow up at their boss. They start to blow up in the workplace and cause issues. Maybe, and I always say this too when I go to community events, that TikTok hero that wants to record everything and put it on social media without really knowing the background. That's important to understand, that in this day and age, things are recorded, things are saved forever, right? And so providing that kind of support is very significant. We focus on something called assent. And what that means is allowing that child to be able to choose a task or activity to be completed, right? So what does that mean? It doesn't mean, as some may believe, you go and take the child to lunch and they say, I don't want that lunch, I want candy for lunch. And you're like, whatever you say, here you go. That's not appropriate in this way, right? We talk about what is socially appropriate, and we have to think about nutrition, we have to think about value and things like that. But if we go into a situation where we say, hey, we're gonna go play Monopoly, and the child's like, I don't wanna play Monopoly, can we play Chutes and Ladders? It doesn't matter to me what they play. I mean, as long as they're playing something together, that's all that we do, right? Yeah, I wanna make sure I make this worth y'all's time. Ask away. What other questions you got? What's going on?
Do parents have an expectation that that they can medicinally take away a lot of the effects of just someone that's on the spectrum of behaviors?
Say again?
What do you see to parents who feel like they can
Medicinally. Yeah, so it really depends on that situation, right? Because what we see, unfortunately, is with my littles, they are heavily involved in their child, but as they get older and older and they see that things have not been working with what their ideas have been, we start kind of seeing this, well, good luck kind of situation, right? And we want to try and support as much as possible. So we do have the parents involved as much as we possibly can. When it comes to the medicinal factor, I did see a conference one day, and I do believe, obviously, there's a place for medicine. I'm on anxiety medication myself. I'm a very transparent person. It has really changed my life, right? Now, with that being said, when it comes to medications for behavior, can it help? Absolutely. But we have to make sure that we're not just putting a Band-Aid on a problem, and we are still able to help these individuals find out a way of working through their behavior appropriately. There's different ways of going about that. There's a therapy system called acceptance and commitment therapy. That is a very good way to work with all ages in that way. This goes with like grounding methods. This goes through calm down strategies, things like that, being able to support, right? When it comes again to the medicine, the difficulty with medicine again is as they get older, or if they gain weight, or if they are a different gender, whatever it may be, right? This all plays a factor into how the medicine works. As they get older again, it can be really great when they're 5 or 7 years old, but as soon as they turn 10, it's the worst medicine for them. You see those behavior spikes and all of that. Yes?
as a parent, right, and somebody who's in the industry, when 95% of medications for autism is off-label and only one is FDA approved, I would rather tell the people, realistically, you know, ABA probably is more effective than any other, you know, therapy out there. So now, here's my pitch for you is this. We've been looking for ABA resources for my son for the past year and a half.
Yeah.
I went through the insurance cycle of, we paid $6,000 to an ABA company and we got zero care.
Right.
I went through insurance. Resources are on and off. We get a lady to come in after a month, they quit, they go somewhere else and stuff like that. Even, I think, where is the cusp here, right? Like, because there's a need for ABA for adults more than anything. Nothing against the young kiddos.
Yeah, right? I get it.
That's full.
They get older eventually.
They got all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
The adults who needed it the most.
Right.
Where do you guys come in? Like my son right now, he needed it a year and a half. He's still out there. We're still looking. I mean, my wife's like, where was this guy?
Right. I'd argue we were 6 minutes away. That's what I would say. Yeah, so with that, right, it's what we try and have parents understand, especially with my teenagers and adults, is that all behavior is learned. So what that means is that the amount of time or the age that your child is will be a more difficult time to resolve an issue because it's learned behavior. As an example, right, if I tell a 16-year-old that's never learned how to drive and I say, hey, you're gonna drive on the left side of the road, they'd be like, say no more, you're good, I got it. First time ever, this is good. If I tell a 40 or 50-year-old to do that, you're not driving on the right side, you're driving on the left side, you're gonna have some kind of issues, right? Maybe you'll go ahead and do it, right? But maybe your hand will switch over to turn to the right, or maybe you'll stop in a certain area that you shouldn't anymore because of the fact that you have more learned experience than you do as a younger individual. And that's why a lot of insurances will focus on early intervention because they don't have to pay for it as long. Because if you get it at a 2-year-old, maybe you only need it for a year. But if you do it as a 15, 16, 20-year-old, 50-year-old, we go all the way up, right, to geriatrics if we need to. It may take longer. And that's part of the issue with the insurance side. Yeah, it does. They do to a point. So they'll do it to possibly, if you're lucky, right, and you see a lot of those kind of behaviors, they'll do the full-time, right? But more often than not, they'll do focus. And what that means is 10 hours, 5 hours, 50, those kind of things. So it just really depends because then what comes into this, right, is that you have to have an ABA program that is willing to see the parent as a partner, that is not just seeing them as a money source, right? Because unfortunately, and I'm very transparent here, there's a lot of money in ABA, right? One child in a month could probably give an ABA company $10,000, in 12 months, $120,000. After that, I wasn't a math major, I can't do anymore. Right, but that's one child, right? But if we go into it with the idea of, I'm just here to work myself out of a job, I need the parent to come in weekly. I need the parent to be a partner with me. What do you want your child to do? What does he or she want me to do, right? If they're functional enough to tell me, that's what's significant. But it also needs to be a flexibility in the sense where if the parent is saying, I want this fixed tomorrow, that's not gonna happen, just realistically, right? But if we can work through, I'm gonna show you the graphs, and I'm gonna show you him increasing behavior, decreasing behavior, neutral behavior, him learning skills, learning how to do more community type things. We can do that as a partnership so long as we can be transparent in that way. And that's how we get success and independence in the individual. As long as we can be on the same team and same side and say, we're working together, maybe on 2 different sides, but meeting in the middle to reach that success. Does that make sense? Awesome. Yeah. Anything else? What's up? Here to help. They were in the gift bags. Yeah, and then I didn't, I'm out of cards. But so our wrap cards are gonna be in the gift bag with a QR code. And then I'll put a QR code out here for you guys as well if you want to take a picture of it so it goes to the website. Or I'm right in the back, just give me your information. I'm here for the rest of the time.
Everybody's gonna leave with one of these with his card.
There. And come on by, we're super transparent. I know my clinic's for the littles, right? But come see what we do. We try and help out. And then my other clinic is at Pruitt, and we support, we're getting tables for like workstations, buying laptops to go through Indeed. We'll go to the job site. Again, we work with TWC, so we are able to work with resume building and things like that as well. We're here for the community. I live in Harmony. I'm a part of this community. I'm not some fancy guy or whatever. I just want to help because no one really was able to help my mom when I was little, and I don't want that to happen again.
You think you're fancy.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, seriously, I'm an open book. Ask me anything about my autism. I don't care. We do stuff internationally. If you have a friend that needs something, we work in South Africa, Ireland, Scotland, UK, Pakistan. Anything that you guys do need, we're here for you. So, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Armando. Amazing the people that you meet just by wandering around outside. Okay, next up we have Kelly with Project Beacon. Project Beacon is a new endeavor. It's going to come. It's coming alive now, but it's really going to come alive next year. And again, it's all of us doing our part as part of this community to help solve the problems, offer services and benefits. So I present to you Kelly with Project Beacon.
Never go last and never go after Armando. I'm just gonna say, let me make sure I add some value. Let's start with playing the opposite game. I will start off with that I do not have Gail's story for sure with John, and I don't have Connie's story with Trey. I did everything the opposite way that these mothers did for their children. So just by way of introduction, I'm mom to Mason. Mason is my 28-year-old who is on the autism spectrum. He also has an intellectual disability along with that. We did not know that for a long time because we were like you. Mason went into early childhood intervention. I knew something wasn't quite right, but I didn't know what it was. You know, I was a working mom. Marriage kind of fell apart pretty early when the kids were little. I have a daughter who just turned 30 yesterday. I'm feeling really old today. I was like, how is that possible? So I had Sarah and Mason, and yeah, I was working, and I had a good friend who was the owner of the daycare where my children went, and she said, she was terrified to come and talk to me. And she said, I think that Mason might need a little bit more help. And I thought, well, you don't say, because I thought the same thing. I was like, I knew it wasn't right, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And if it wasn't for her saying, you know, we can call early childhood, they'll come in, they'll do the assessments, they'll figure out what Mason needs, you know, so we got into speech therapy and occupational therapy and physical therapy and all the therapies and all of that stuff. And then pretty soon, I was putting him on the school bus the same year that Sarah got on the school bus for kindergarten. My son got on a different school bus to go to the Keep Pace program in the elementary school. But that's, you know, that's kind of where my journey stopped because I left it up to the professionals. I said, they know what they're doing. And I just was a supportive mom, you know. I did what I was supposed to do at home to try to support him in being successful. And I'm gonna tell you that it was hard. I was a single parent for a long time. So, you know, being able to follow him in his educational journey on a daily basis was not an option. It was, let's make sure Mason can stay in school for the whole day, you know, as we go. And Mason did, you know, he had his ups, he had his downs. Wheels kind of fell off in high school, and we had a wonderful soul in Conroe ISD who came to me and said, we think we need to do something different for Mason because he was not being able to stay in the classroom. And in fact, when he was in the classroom, it was 3 individuals in the classroom and just Mason because his behavior, he had learned, to Armando's point, he had learned he did not like school. And if he had a meltdown, threw a fit, they were gonna call one of us, my mom, me, or my husband. At the time I had remarried by then. And one of us would come get him. And I was like, we can't keep doing this. And so they offered some options for Mason, and that's really what turned it around. And it was when we got into programs with professionals that could really see what was at the root of Mason's behavior and try to turn all of that around. And I didn't have the language for it at the time, but that was really about ABA therapies and other intensive behavioral therapies that he needed at the time. So I'll fast forward because I told you he was 28. In 2019, Mason aged out of the education program. And as parents, many of you know that when you hit that 22-year-old mark and you age out of the educational system and into the system of adult care, you look up and you're like, okay, for me, it was, we'll just figure out what the next step is when the next step comes. We'll just figure it out. Because that's what we had always kind of done, and it had worked for us up until that point. But for Mason, he aged out in May of 2019. My husband and I had the bright idea that we would sell our home, we'd move to a different area, and I would get Mason into the next step, whatever that was. And COVID happened. So, I started to watch Mason regress, and I started to see him, and I got a glimpse into what his life would be like if we didn't do something. And it was every day on the couch, because I was also one of these parents where I was watching John's pictures in there, and I've had the benefit of knowing Gail for a little bit now, and I know that John is he's just in everything, Dance Dynamics, Challenger Baseball, Conroe Stars, all of this stuff. When they would call me and say, hey, they have these things for Mason, I was like, yeah, my kid's pretty antisocial. He doesn't want to do that. So I never made him do it. And it never, ever occurred to me until we were sitting in a place where he no longer had school, where he was exposed to people and places that he couldn't be exposed to outside of the home, until we were in a place where he no longer had it. And that's where I kind of woke up and I said, oh, wow. So I had already started thinking about long-term residential for Mason. I had talked to another colleague that they were actually my client. I was in corporate America. I did a lot of consulting work, built a consulting practice inside of a firm, became an owner, went all around the world with my clients, did lots of fun stuff, loved it while I was doing it, but it no longer was fulfilling when I realized my son doesn't have what he needs, and it's up to me to provide it. And so now I will say where I wasn't opposite is maybe I got on the train a little late, but I finally got there. I had started thinking about residential, had talked to a good friend of mine. We had consulted with a special needs consultant, and he told us, he said, hey, what a lot of parents are doing, is you can, buy a home, you can control it, set up your own operations, create a group home. Rachel, God bless you for getting into this business. I looked at that model and I said, man, all right, okay, cool. We could do that. That's a lot of work. And I'm still responsible for everything for Mason. That's not a sustainable model, because I'm trying to think of what happens when I'm not here. I also turned 50 during COVID, so that was exciting. Yeah, I know. So you're going, oh, I'm on the other side of that hill. So what do I do? So my friend and I, he has a son who's profoundly affected on the spectrum. And we said, there's not enough. Listen, I got serious about research at that point. I was like, what's out there? Who's out there? Who's doing what? Who's doing good stuff? What's going to be the right answer for Mason? Is it there? And I was like, well, holy camole. There are people out there doing it. There are people out there doing great things. The unfortunate part is during COVID, they couldn't help you and they couldn't take you. And their wait lists were so long, it wasn't even funny. So we said, let's take a bigger swing at the plate. let's think about residential and let's think about what that could look like longer term. And so we got on a path of what are the creative, innovative models across the US? What could we do? So Rachel, just like you, we went out, we did what we know how to do as a consultant. You go do benchmarking. You go find the best in class. What are the emerging models? What are the things that we think we can bring home to Texas? And so for the past 4 years, we've been working on what is that vision, what does that look like, and what is the path to get to that ultimate goal of an intentional residential community. And I will tell you, it is a hard path. I know many have mentioned the systems in here, the government agencies, the things that will become the barriers. We fully expect that there will be roadblocks and barriers, but we're not afraid of them. We've watched other models come up across the United States. We are in close communication with those founders and owners to find out what it is that they're doing. We've also been part of the advocacy fight to get more outcomes-based determinations instead of what is the bricks and mortar of the solution. Texas has traditionally been a group home model state. What are the other solutions that we can have in Texas? So we advocated for the rule language change in the Texas Administrative Code. That language has been adopted, so the path is there. Now it's just up to us to fulfill what that path is. So I'll back up, because where did Mason go? What happened to Mason? Because you're probably wondering, well, what's he doing now? Is he still sitting on the couch? Because you're taking a long time to get this done. He is not. I had to go searching for the right answer for Mason. Mason currently attends a special needs college program in Union Grove, Wisconsin. So they work on occupational certifications in either horticulture, technology, or culinary arts. Mason is 6'2", about 260 pounds. He likes to eat, so he chose culinary arts as his path of choice. And he is in 3rd year, so he will be home in May of 2025 after successfully completing his program. And I'll cross both fingers, because I was sharing it's an everyday up and down journey with him. Here's the thing and why I so believe in the expertise of the board certified behavior analysts, the registered behavior therapists, the special educators that come alongside of you, because Shepherd's College started out in the 1950s. So their story was that they stood in the gap. So I don't know how many of you know, we did not have special education in our public schools until the late 1970s. So when I was a kid, those kids were institutionalized, or they got no education. It just didn't exist. So Shepherd's College, faith-based ministry, said they were not Shepherd's College at the time, they were Shepherd's Ministries. They stood in the gap. They provided that special education. When special education became a discipline throughout the U.S., you started to see it, in most of our public schools, and they were starting to treat that as a specialized discipline. That's when Shepherd's Ministry said, okay, now it's being solved for somewhat in that area. So they shifted their attention to what's next. What's next when they get out of the educational system. And so I've started to adopt this philosophy because it's what I bought into for Mason. But they talk about getting their students to the highest level of appropriate independence. And so in my mind, that's part of what Project Beacon is about. I don't believe that they ever stop learning. In fact, one of the slides, one of your 300 slides, as I was skipping through them, Gail, it said, it was in a page where you had written something up, and it just caught my eye. It said, John's learning is not stuck. It's not stuck. They keep learning. So if you want them to learn the right behavior, if you want them to learn the right skill, you've got to surround them with the right expertise to do that. I tell you all of that because while I sent Mason away to Union Grove, Wisconsin, and it's not as scary as it sounds because I have a nephew that lives in Chicago, which is about 45 minutes south of there, and I have a nephew who lives in Milwaukee, and it's about 45 minutes north of there. So I've got family that can get to Mason on a dime. If I called them up and said, and they would tell me, Aunt Kelly, I'll be there, so they'll do it. Fortunately, I've never had to do that, so it's all worked out. But Mason struggled because, the school itself was not really prepared for what the challenges of what autism can bring to the table. And so when Mason was really struggling in that first year, I asked, do you have behavioral therapists or access to a BCBA that could come in and maybe help us? There on site, and they didn't. They didn't have it. The closest thing was in Madison, too far away. So I hired my own behavioral coach to work with Mason over Zoom call on a weekly basis. That behavior analyst works with not only Mason, but also his advisor and the staff. So they work through what are all of the mechanisms. Because we've done that over the past 3 years, guess what they're adding to their team this next school year? So they will have a board certified behavior analyst on staff. I know, it's amazing, so it just shows you what it means. So that all of that just gives you context for, what is Project Beacon? So I told you Project Beacon, we want to be an intentional residential community here in Montgomery County, somewhere close to where we're standing, right now. That would be ideal. This has been Mason's home. This is where he grew up. It's where he's comfortable. It's where he wants to come back to live. By the way, we did move away. We moved back because of Project Beacon. We said this is the community we want to be in. So I've uprooted my life and Mason's in quite a lot of different ways. But how do you get there? So it's not like you can just one day say, okay, you're going to move out of mom and dad's house and you're going to be super successful wherever you go. We said we want to open up the Beacon Access Center, and the Beacon Access Center will offer full and part-time programs, as well as what we're calling SMILES classes. So it's the SMILES is an acronym that stands for Supporting Mastery Through Inclusive Leisure and Employment Skills. So we see a need across the spectrum. It doesn't matter. I mean, you were so kind to share Trey's journey with us. Super academically capable, but where are all of the other supports to make sure that he can use that? And I talk to as many parents on that end of the spectrum where they need the extra help to get them there, as I do the parents who are like myself, their son or daughter is in the moderately affected category, as well as those who are more profoundly affected. And so we have a heart to want to serve across the spectrum, and our programs are designed for that. They are designed with board certified behavior analysts, registered behavior therapists, and special educators as part of our staff. We will open our programs in January, so we're actually taking over an existing adult day program in the Humble-Kingwood area. Many of you know it, Inspire ND, that started out as Including Kids. So Jennifer Dantzler's program, they are gonna come up underneath the Project Beacon umbrella. The only reason we're starting in the Humble-Kingwood area is because we'll be under construction right here in Oak Ridge North. And so we'll be a subcontractor. We will not, so we will be an HTS waiver eligible site. So we'll have an ISS provider license, but we will come up underneath another HTS provider. So yeah, okay. And to be honest, there aren't many of our students who are receiving those HTS waivers right now, because a lot of them are still in the weight range, my son being one of them. I will give you one cautionary tale, because I did do that. I did listen to them when we started Keep Pace, get Mason on all the lists. I did get him on all the lists. What I did not know was that I was supposed to check to make sure Mason stayed on the list. and he did not stay on all of the lists. So Mason will probably be 45 years old before he gets any of those services. So I am really on a mission to make sure he achieves his highest level of independence that's appropriate for him. I tease him all the time. I say, my goal is to make you a taxpayer. He likes the idea of getting a paycheck. He does not like the idea of paying taxes. I said, join the club, buddy. None of us like it. So, so in March, April, it's all going to depend on contractors and how fast we get all of our occupancy permits and everything else. So we'll be able to have the full and part-time programs as well as our smiles classes. We did not start, I mean, we've been serving the community. In fact, we do social enrichment outings at least once a month. We normally do those at the Spring Creek Community Center off our Old Riley Fuzzle Road. Today, they're out at the Fall Festival at one of our volunteers. She's got a beautiful park-like setting house on some acreage in Magnolia, and so they're all out there doing pumpkin painting and festival games and lots of stuff. So we've been doing that since July of 2022, and that has been all volunteer-led, and it's just given us a way to serve the community and provide pathways for friendships and getting out of the isolation that, you know, our guys can so often feel. And yes, when Mason's home, I make him come to those, and he usually does enjoy it, you know, even though I forced him to be a little bit social on some of those events. Some other things that are, I think, a little bit notable about what we're trying to do is because we knew it would take us some time to get there, because Armando, back to you, we're not an insurance provider because we're working in the, you know, older adolescent and adult space. That's typically not an area where you see large volumes of insurance dollars being pumped into. So we said, well, we're not going to pursue that. We'll make sure that we're a waiver eligible program so that we can offer that, mostly private pay. I forgot where I was going with this topic.
Well, you were talking about where you're going forward, but I'm also going to what you said, construction. Are you allowed to speak about that?
Yes. So about the Beacon Access Center, did you say construction or?
You mentioned Kingwood or Jennifer Nestler.
Right.
And then you mentioned something's under construction.
Yeah, so it's a lease space, and so in full disclosure, we're in the process of executing that lease right now. So our contractor is, they're pricing the documents for the fit out of the space. So do you guys know where Woodlands Elite Gym is? You know, over, if you go Woodlands Parkway across to Robinson Road and it dead ends, or you hit the little jog, Hannah, and then it continues over the railroad track. Woodlands Elite Gym is right over there. And then it's a business park. But there's also a lot of, I'm gonna call it family-based programs over there, because like the DBAT is over there, the soccer practice field is over there, lots of mixed martial arts is over there. So there's a lot of programs that kind of go to health and fitness for families. So it fits in really well. In fact, when I drove through there, the first time I drove up on it, when I looked at it on Google Maps, I was like, you know, but when I drove over there, all I could see were opportunities. I was like, soccer, indoor soccer. They have nobody here during the day. So I was right with you, Donna. Nobody's there during the day. I bet we could do fitness and recreation over there. Or our guys could be over there having some vocational opportunities, you know, to learn some skills, cleaning equipment or doing things. There's a catering company over there. You know, my brain is immediately going to, again, internships, vocational opportunities, you know, so I saw lots of things where I was like, I could come in and be a really good neighbor and offer up some opportunities. You know, going back to, so I'm feeling really good. We're gonna get that lease done. Pricing's gonna come back. We've gotten really creative in meeting all of the code requirements. So City of Oak Ridge North, so we've met with city manager, Public Works Department, permitting department, and the fire marshal. We've done lots of due diligence. Y'all know this story. You got to do lots of stuff to be able to get it going, and the price is right. So fits right in. But we've been raising money, you know, that's where I was going with this, to Armando's point. It's expensive. You know, so we have to have, 6 months of operating capital and cash reserves in the bank so that we can pay our staff, and feel confident that we're going to be able to pay our staff, because it is a reputational risk. So it has taken us longer than I would have liked for it to take, but it is, I think we're getting there all in the right timing. While we've been doing all of that, I've been out in community just trying to build relationships. So we did host a neurodiversity in the workplace panel with the Woodlands Economic Development Partnership. We talked about what neurodiversity in the workplace looks like for not only, the intellectually capable college graduates, but all the way to those who are profoundly affected, who are just looking for an opportunity to be out in community and to learn a new skill, whether that's a coffee cart skill. We've talked to Debbie Sukin, who is the president of Texas Children's Hospital. She started Coffee Cart at Methodist Hospital and tasked Missy Herndon and I with every employer in the Woodlands area needs to have a coffee cart. And I was like, yes, they do. If you don't know what coffee cart is exactly what it sounds like. It's a cart where the students will learn different things. They'll each take a job, whether that's pushing the cart or, serving the beverages off the cart or the snacks, and they sell those for nominal amounts of money, but it's an opportunity for them to interact with members of the public. And, even if it's just some little bit of eye contact, putting a bag of chips into a paper bag, whatever it is, it's some skill where they're learning some socially appropriate behavior.
And Sebby's got a full-time job over there, kind of a sous chef kind of guy. So sometimes they can kind of...
It can, 100%, yeah. So we do have a program at Lone Star College called the Life Path Program, which is the post-secondary education program for neurodivergent students. It wasn't right for Mason when we started out, but I said, but I love the premise of this program and I want more like it. So I became chair of their advisory board because I wanted to see those kids get out, get their internships, get their opportunities in community. And so I've spent quite a bit of time talking to employers about, we're coming and I'm going to be coming to talk to you about, we want to come in for 6 weeks and we're going to do this job. And I don't care if it's rolling silverware at the Marriott or delivering packages at an assisted living center. There is something that we can do. That's the other thing that Shepherd's College says is you are made on and for a purpose. And I believe everybody deserves to live their purpose.
And to continue on what you're saying, so Montgomery campus, they are 14, 18, 14 from this high school. And then the Commonwealth campus, so you've got 60 FSIQ, 80 critical for life foundations, and then 70 FSIQ, so the IQ is kind of, there's other ways to work around.
FSIQ is full scale IQ.
Yeah.
So.
And that's just like a number. There have been all the other pieces like, essays and math and character and things like that. So they got at least 2 ways to try to get some of them in or not get them in. Anyway, so as Kelly was saying, you have foundations through Bertombo, and then you have life path at Montgomery. 80 is the IQ squad.
70.
Well, 70 over here.
No, 60 at Foundation, 70 at Montgomery.
No, at Tom, we did different scores. So 60, 70, and 80 is what I do here. Talking different. The idea is just that you see. That's not even counting what E.A.M, UT,
Yeah.
other places.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, we've been talking to a lot of the, whether it's college living experience, any of the folks that are in the College Autism Network, which I'm going to have a conversation with Dr. LeBron about Life Path. Why aren't they on it? Because they should be. But the other thing that we know, so Mason's 28, just like Trey. It was before you really knew about autism. We didn't hear about that. In fact, Mason's diagnosis was not autism. It was pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. And, then I think at some point somebody said, that's autism. And I went, oh, okay, whatever, Yeah. So, I, whatever that is, I never got the list of nevers that, Mason could do. I just said, we'll see. We'll see what he can do. That was kind of my attitude, so we'll go from there. But, looking for those community inclusion sites for our young men and women to do. Our Smiles classes, one of the things that we have as part of that is what we're calling Beacon Works. And so Beacon Works is exactly what it sounds like. For this year, it'll be the pre-vocational side of things, the early side, and then some of the community inclusion. Eventually, we'll move into becoming a Texas workforce provider, or providing, supported coaching and things like that. So the traditional path that most individuals who are trying to get those services. Before we get to intentional residential community, though, we'll offer what we call a transition academy. And our intent is to do that in partnership with one of the local universities. So we're in conversations with them. So Transition Academy is a 2-year supported intensive program where we will provide training on the college campus environment for all of those things that individuals who are looking to eventually move into independent living environments. Now, they may start at a supported independent living, but eventually they want to graduate out. So it's everything that it sounds like. How do you navigate the community through transportation? How do you take care of all of your daily bills? How do you collect all of your own personal information and be able to communicate that when you go to a doctor's visit or to Social Security or Texas Workforce or whoever you're talking to? I was like Gail in this. I did not tell Mason what his diagnosis was. And it was not until we went to a meeting with Texas Workforce that they asked him what his diagnosis was. And I was like, he's not going to be able to answer that. Because I never told Mason what was wrong with him, ever. And so in hindsight, I was like, well, maybe I should have had a conversation about it. Now he knows. Now he'll tell you, I'm autistic, So he does know that. But we want to make sure that Transition Academy, in fact, the programs that are using a Transition Academy program, the data that's coming out of that is that they 75% more likely to find employment and keep employment. So we're starting to see what that data really looks like. And that'll bring me to my final point, which is we want to be able to give back into this space because we are still pioneering what adult services can look like for individuals on the autism spectrum. What we did 25 years ago for early intervention and intensive ABA therapy, we're starting to figure out what does that path look like for adulthood. And it includes things like keeping the behavioral supports, even as an adult. I've got a board member who will say quite frequently, and I love this analogy, if you're a diabetic, you don't lose access to your endocrinologist because you turned a certain age. It doesn't happen. You should not lose access to your supports, your medically necessary supports, just because you turn a certain age, because we don't stop learning. I will take any questions. I know I've talked for a long time, but... Sorry. Yeah, so again, it's to get the individual to their highest level of appropriate independence. So our stated mission is to build a community of belonging. Belonging is, as I have come to define it was defined by Dr. Eric Carter from Vanderbilt University, now at Baylor University. He talks about 10 dimensions of belonging. That's to be, to be known, to be accepted, to be invited, to be heard, to be befriended, to be loved. I'm not going to get them all because I'm going to run out of them, but you get the idea. I mean, it's more than just my presence in the room. It's my presence being known, and you know me as an individual, and you are loved and accepted and befriended because of who you are. And that's the kind of world we want to create for them and help open those doors. Armando's right. We're not going to be able to change the world overnight. We can only teach them to be as socially appropriate as we can, but we shouldn't stop fighting to open the doors out in the community. And so community is a big part of that, but it's, Beacon as a whole will focus on social, recreational, vocational, educational opportunities, and eventually independent supported living. So it's a whole path, but we'll get there. Yeah. 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 So we do intend to serve across the spectrum. So, to start out, what I can say is that we will not be prepared to handle medically fragile students. That's not where we're set up. So, there will be some of those criteria. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. So right, and it depends. So what I would say is, it's like, who's your typical customer? Individuals with autism and other neurodiversities. And the reason I'm saying it that way is because you could be a level 1 or a level 3, and you may fit right in to our group setting. So, it is going to be based off of an assessment process. We need to know that we have the right staffing for that individual and that they'll fit into the right group setting. We won't be for everyone. That is for sure. Yeah. What I will say is behavior alone is not a criteria for non-admission. Yeah. Right. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. High levels of need, right. Right, gotcha, yeah. Yeah.
So it's like us, and then it's kind of, then we all take the higher functioning ones, and you're gonna, in my vision, you're taking the ones that are eventually gonna live on their own and have jobs.
Possibly, but we have students right now that are nonverbal who will never live on their own. And in fact, our intentional residential community is also set up to handle those who may need the 24/7 support, as well as those that are going to use us as a leapfrog, and make it out into communities. So I would show you what that master plan looks like, but it is different segments of what's already been master planned on our site, and we intend to start that even now, we're doing it now by default because we're taking over an existing program. So we've got guys who are, they almost have their own micro enterprises in graphic design, and they're running their own little business over here where we're supporting these guys who are highly capable to individuals who need help, in everyday independent life skills, and those are the skills that we're working on for that individual. But the bottom line remains the same. We think that community inclusion and getting out there and making sure that it's to their level and what they can support, it's still very person-centered. Like you said earlier, you met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. So, thank you.
And speaking of special angels, I thought I'd give you just a couple of minutes. You've been so gracious to always support us, conferences and our open house and all different things. Would you like to say a word about special angels?
I'm Lisa Smith. I'm the Executive Director of Special Angels of the Woodlands. I've been there about 4 years after the horrible COVID experience where we started out with 4 clients and now we've got up to 43 clients. Wonderful staff. I don't know if y'all know, but I'm going to point out our program manager, Claudia Morales. And then, of course, we got our wonderful QA specialist. I think most of you all know T.E.A.M, my bosses. But anyway, real short and sweet. I'm ecstatic to be here to hear and learn more and more about what you all do in the community and what you all, your challenges and your accomplishments with the folks that we serve. I mean, it's just wonderful that we're here. My background was not in this. I've been more like in the workforce background, working with engineers. I've also came into this world or came into this position knowing that it's so different than what I'm used to doing. The only experience I've ever had with anybody with any type of personal disability was with a cousin of mine who was the same age as me at age 9. And when we went to go visit her, I couldn't understand why she was still in diapers, you know, coloring and could not talk. And my other siblings could not get in touch with her, but we just sat, her and I colored, and I was able to communicate with her in ways that other people couldn't. So I had a special heart and a place to work with her. So when I found myself working at the Special Angels, it is a work of God, a mission for me working with them because I'm learning more about myself than I am, you know, as an individual and as a person, but they have so much to give back to us and in this whole community than anybody can ever imagine. And it's been a privilege. What we do is we do serve the angels, ages, and I say 19, we've had one that was 19, but he's about 25 now. He's been there that long, but from 19 to whatever age, I think 65, 66 is what we have now. They're beautiful people. Levels 1 and 5, and we do have a few level 8s. So there's ways that we can't handle everybody, especially with those behaviors that we sometimes can't control. And it is a staff thing, it's a staffing issue. We just recently became certified as an ISS, wonderful, now I wanted to say individual socialization and skills, but yeah, we went through those hoops to get where we were going, but every year, 1, 2, or 3. So we're always trying to open our doors for more fundraising because, as you all know, tuitions don't get along, you know. But the quick and easiest way is that we do want to work together as a community, and if somebody doesn't work out in our organization, we might or our facility, then we would do refer out to the organizations that can. We learn so much about them and what their needs are. I tell you what, Claudia can spot them just like that, so can T.E.A.M. And I've looked in there and I said, that person needs more help, or that person doesn't need as much help as we can give them. So we want to make sure that they're in the right place from the right time. So, but what we do give them is a lot of fun, a lot of activities, staying busy all the time. They do have a little small educational program they go through in the morning. They have a nice lunch, a lot of learning, teaching, cleaning, being team members, and they're family members. So what it is a big family there, and they miss things when they miss out on an opportunity if they don't get there. And if somebody couldn't make an outing, they get upset because that's part of their job. Now, what I'm finding out just listening to you all, there might be some more that we can do for them working with you all together, because you're right, we can't do it all. We have some great angels that can probably benefit from other programs, but there'll be some clients of yours that can benefit from ours. So I'm looking forward to working together with you all as a team. So thank you again for your information.
We're going to close out with some parting words from our fearless leader, Rachel.
Again, I want to say thank y'all for coming out and spending Saturday with us. Again, I loved hearing everybody's stories. I got to learn more about Gail's story, and I mean, just it's amazing to be here with y'all. And there's still a lot to learn. I mean, we just hit on a few little things, but I just went to a conference a couple weeks ago, and there's just so much information, And I think it's good that we have different levels or different, your focus is this, your focus is this, our focus is this. Like we take every level of need, we take every behavior, we just take it all. And we have a lot of success stories with it too. So, I mean, we do have a lot of success. We can come in here like Donna, would see things and like, they're doing this now, and they're doing this now. And then we have a family here that, their son is in one of our community living homes, and they see a difference in him and the things that he's doing. And he's independent, He's been at home this whole time, and that was a big challenge, a lot of courage for them to take that transition and move him into a home. So thank you for that opportunity to take care of your son, sir. So again, thank y'all for coming out. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes, we didn't do questions and answers, so. Did anybody have any questions?
Just take some time afterwards, and
Yeah.
just all mingle and ask your questions. Everybody's going to leave with a goodie bag that has contact information. So, and then I've got everybody's email address, so I'll email you with who is here. Then,
Yeah, I think we need to put it. We're gonna have our YouTube. Maybe Kevin can help me do our YouTube channel so we can start uploading all the things that we're doing. We also forgot to mention Time to Care, but let me answer Gail, and then I'll just say a little bit about Time to Care.
So your restaurant business, I was curious if you did that, is that a chicken or an egg thing? Did you do the restaurant because you wanted a workplace thing? Did you do it to diversify? I mean, what was your thought process?
It was a lot. I ran concession stands at the baseball park for about 8 years. So by doing that, that created jobs for some of our guys. So like we did the fall and we would do the spring season. So that created jobs for them. So I can't even believe I did that for 8 years. Literally loading, stocking, working, everything, ordering. So that created jobs. Then the restaurant came about. I grew up with a family of entrepreneurs. My grandparents owned several restaurants. When they retired and moved here to Houston, they opened up a restaurant, closed it down, opened a smaller restaurant. So I don't know, I just wanted a restaurant, So well, let me try this out. It hasn't been the best, but I mean, we still have the restaurant. It is a franchise. It employs 2 of our members right now. We have 2 guys that work there. So it does kind of go hand in hand, but it was a family thing. It was, my grandparents had a restaurant. I wanted a restaurant. So I am entertaining different ideas with the restaurant because our franchise is up. So we're trying to see if we're going to go a different route. We're trying to see, I even thought about doing a whole, like the Beatty's Coffee, a coffee shop, a bakery, a French, I don't know. I got so many ideas in my head. I just need somebody to come and just take them all out and maybe I can start over. But no, there's so many ideas I could do with the restaurant. I'm still trying to figure that part out too. But again, it is supposed to be a form of employment for our guys, that they can go in there and work. Because that's another thing. When I first started my business plan for team abilities or different abilities, we were saying, we can't find jobs in a community. I'm just going to create jobs. That was that's in my business plan. Way back.
Franchise instead of starting from the ground up.
Right. So I bought an existing restaurant with a franchise. Yeah. But that franchise is up. So we're trying to figure out what we want to do. We had this whole French bakery idea. I don't know. Right?
no idea what that's going to be like.
Yes, and this is my best friend Priscilla. She knows, she goes on all my adventures with me. She's like, what's next? Like, what is next? So, we don't know. Whatever comes across. Like I said, we do have a pharmacy opening next year, catered to our population. We're even talking about a transportation company, medical and, with our population, because we have several vans and I pay like $60,000 a year for insurance. So we're going to see if we can utilize that for something else.
Can I say one more sentence? So starting with that feeder system, it's one of the reasons that the teachers there in the high school program at the Woodlands High School, when we do the homecoming parade.
Okay.
Because it takes our kiddos out on the float, out in the community, and the teachers love it because they're being seen, right?
Right.
So it's just like, okay, y'all, community, these are some of the students that we have.
Right.
Going out in the workplace, and you should see them, and they should see you, and they're capable, and they can handle it. So it's like that exposure. There's never such a thing as too young.
Right.
Or too little.
Right. Yes. Thank you. And then the time to care, we didn't get to touch on that. Sam Taylor, he wasn't able to make it today, but Time to Care is an organization which I'm going to get Donna to send out his PowerPoint presentation. And they are really trying to help HCS providers raise the wages for our direct care staff. You know, last year it was like $9. So they, then HHSC, Medicaid, they all got together and they raised it to $10.60. That is the amount of pay that a direct care staff works, gets paid technically. I mean, we pay our guys more. We paid our guys more back with the $9, you know, but they got an amazing thing going, and they're really, really fighting for our direct care staff to help them get more money. Because it just lists all the duties. When you see the little PowerPoint, it lists all the duties of what a person goes through, you know, in these homes, at our ISS, and getting, you know, technically I could pay them $10.60, or last year I could have only paid them $9 for all the work that they do. It's just, it's sad. It's very sad. But again, they're it's free to join them. They'll send you out weekly emails on what they're doing. They send out like letters and calls you can make to the legislation people. I'm not all into that, which I think I'm going to try. I want to work with them more. But they'll have families, parents, anybody call these people, send letters so that when they go and do their meetings in Austin, they can try to get some more money for our direct care staff, because they really deserve it. So she'll send that out. Again, thank y'all for coming. Y'all have a great rest of y'all's weekend.